Good evening. I will now call this public hearing of Tuesday, February 9th, 2021 to order. Council, for the purposes of confirming that we have quorum, please ensure that your video is turned on. This meeting will be convened by electronic means as authorized under the order of the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General of the Province of British Columbia, Emergency Program Act, updated Ministerial Order number M192. And as such, council members are participating by phone, and as chair of this meeting, I am also participating by phone. Please note if my connection is lost during any portion of this meeting, we will recess the meeting until my connection is restored. If council loses connection during any portion of the hearing, we'll need to recess the meeting until the connection is restored. If council loses connection during the voting process, we have staff on hand to facilitate getting you back online quickly while we suspend the voting process. The contact information has been circulated to you. To ensure that quorum is maintained throughout the meeting, please let the clerk know if you leave the meeting. The live stream of this meeting will have both audio and video of council members speaking. Presentations, amendments, and vote results will be projected to viewers when available. Members of the public can also listen to the proceedings via the live stream and the YouTube link, which will be tweeted out by @VanCityClerk. Presentations, amendments, and vote results will be projected to viewers when available. Lastly, following the updated guidance issued on February 5th, 2021, in-person participation for local government meetings and public hearings is not permitted under the Provincial Health Officer Order on Gatherings and Events. Therefore, speakers who will be providing comment to council will be by phone, and a moderator will assist in patching the speakers through when their turn comes up. Clerk, may we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor Stewart has a leave of absence for urgent personal business. Deputy Mayor Carr sitting in the chair. Councillor DeGenova.
Present.
Councillor Fry.
Present.
Councillor Swanson.
Here.
Councillor Hardwick.
Present.
Councillor Wiebe.
Present.
Councillor Boyle.
Present.
Councillor Dominato.
Present.
Councillor Bly.
Present.
Councillor Kirby-Yung.
Present.
The meeting has quorum, Deputy Mayor Carr.
Great, thank you. We are acknowledging that we are on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and thank them for having cared for this land and look forward to working with them to building this great city together in partnership. I also want to take a moment to recognize the immense contributions of city staff who work hard every day to make our city an incredible place to live, work, and play. Before we begin, I do have some announcements. Speakers will have 5 minutes to make their comments and should limit their comments to the merits of the report being considered. Speakers should also state whether they are in support or opposed to the recommendations and if they are a resident of Vancouver. Speakers may only speak once and should follow along on Twitter @VanCityClerk for updates on the progress of the meeting so they don't miss their turn to speak. Any comments on agenda items can be submitted in writing to our online web form at vancouver.ca/public hearing comments. The link to that will also be tweeted out. Finally, speakers who pre-registered with presentations are reminded the public live feed it does have a slight delay. To navigate through the slides of your presentation, you should say next. A reminder that Council's role at a public hearing is as a quasi-judicial body, which means that Council is to only consider the merits of the rezoning application or heritage designation. Council members may ask clarifying questions from speakers, including the applicant, or technical advice from staff, but should save debate for after the close of speakers. After hearing from speakers, Council may 1. Approve in principle the application, 2. Refuse the application, or 3. Defer the application for further consideration. We are now on to item 1, miscellaneous amendments, zoning and development bylaw, and sign bylaw. First of all, does any member of council wish to declare conflict of interest on item 1? I am not seeing anyone on the queue. So the clerk will now read the application and summary of correspondence received.
There is an application by the General Manager of Planning, Urban Design, and Sustainability to make miscellaneous amendments to the Zoning and Development Bylaw and sign bylaw to improve clarity, update references, correct inadvertent errors or omissions, and improve the administration of the bylaws. No correspondence has been received on this application since referral to public hearing and prior to the close of the speakers list, and we see the public comments.
Thank you, Kurt. Just to note, if there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 34561, # to get on the list. The phone number will be tweeted out and available on the live stream. We have Ileana McDonald, planner, citywide and regional planning, urban design and sustainability, on the phone to present the application. I don't believe, Clerk, that there are any registered speakers for this item.
It is the clerk here. No, we have no registered speakers.
Right. Council, you may elect to waive the presentation if you so desire, but otherwise we will move on with the presentation.
Waive the presentation. Motion to waive the presentation.
That's great. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councilor Hardwick. Yep, seconder by Councilor DiGenova. Are there any questions from council to staff? Not at this point. Great, then let's move ahead and we can hear from the public. So again, I'm going to repeat, if there are any speakers who wish to speak to us, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 34561, #, to get on the list before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be tweeted out again and available on the live stream. Madam Clerk, I wonder if you can let us know if we have any speakers on the line to provide comment.
It is the clerk here. There is no speakers on the line at the moment.
Okay, I'm going to call again if there are any speakers on the line for this. Madam Clerk?
Yes, I was just checking and still no speakers, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, so I am going to call a third time, and in the third, so again, if there's any speakers, please call our toll-free 9. So any other speakers, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by the participant code 34561, # to get on the list, and that will also be tweeted out. And Council, we're going to take a 5-minute break to wait to see if anybody does call in, and so we will resume at 6:15. speakers on the line for this item?
It is the clerk and no speakers.
Great. Okay. Given that there are no speakers, the speakers list is now closed. As few or no public comments were received on this item after 5 p.m. today, I suggest we now close the receipt of public comments, move on to hearing closing comments, asking further questions of staff, and make a decision. Does the applicant, in this case the city staff, have any closing comments on this matter?
Hi, Councillor Carr. It's Lisa King, Senior Planner with Regulation Policy. We have no closing comments.
Great. Thank you. Council, do you have any questions for staff?
Move the motion?
Yes, I don't see anybody. You're quick on the draw. Councillor DiGenova, you know one on the
Second,
speakers
Fry.
list. And there you go, Mr. Sorry, Councillor Fry. Very good. We have a mover and seconder. Any debate? I see no one on the queue. So, Madam Clerk, if you could move us to a vote on this.
Point of privilege, Chair, if
Um,
I could have a vote in favor, please.
A vote in, yes, that's being recorded for you. Madam Clerk, I'm trying to use Vote Assist and cannot, so personal privilege, if you could vote for me in favor, please. And Councillor Kirby-Yung? Is Councillor Kirby-Yung in attendance? Madam Clerk?
Yes, Deputy Mayor Carr, you need a vote assist, is that correct?
I do. For some reason, that panel won't work for me. And as Councillor Kirby-Yung, I did not see her vote. Has she voted?
I have voted, Madam Chair.
Great. Okay. I cannot see the results. It is unanimous. Great. Well done, Council. So we are going to move on to item 2. Item 2 is zoning and development bylaw amendments for mass timber construction. First of all, does any member of council wish to declare conflict of interest on item 2? I am not seeing. No one is on the list. So I'll just, Clerk, perhaps you could now read the application and summary of correspondence received.
There is an application by the General Manager, Planning, Urban Design, and Sustainability to amend the zoning and development bylaw to support mass timber construction in new buildings that are 7 stories or higher. The proposed amendments would define mass timber buildings, allow variance for maximum building height of up to 18 centimeters per floor, and allow design flexibility for mass timber buildings in all zones. The following correspondence has been received since referral to public hearing and prior to the close of the speakers list and receipt of public comments. 5 pieces of correspondence in support, and no pieces of correspondence in opposition and dealing with other aspects of the application. This represents all correspondence received up to 5 p.m. today.
Thank you so much, Clerk. If there are any speakers who wish to speak to this item, please call toll-free 1-833 353-8610, followed by the participant code 34561, number sign to get on the list before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be tweeted out again and available on the live stream. Council, we have Sean Pander, Green Building Manager, Sustainability Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability, on the phone to present the application. Madam Clerk, I just wanted to verify, do we have any members of the public who have signed up to speak to this at this point?
It is the clerk here, and no, we have no registered speakers and no one on the line at the moment.
Okay.
Move to waive presentation?
Okay, I would need a seconder for that.
I would like to
Second,
see the
Councillor
presentation.
Carbion.
I'd like to see the presentation.
Okay, nobody's on the speaking queue around this, but there is a request to see hear the
I
presentation.
withdraw my motion then.
Okay. I don't think I heard it seconded, but anyway, in the little kerfuffle there. Thank you, Councillor Nova. And Mr. Pander, I wonder if you can proceed in just one moment. I'm only going to call out again. If there are any speakers who want to speak to council, please call toll free 1-833-353-8610, followed by the participant code 34561 hashtag to get on the list. So, Mr. Pander, go ahead with your presentation.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. Pleasure to be presenting on this. We do not have a visual presentation. This is a proposal to modify the zoning and development bylaw to enable mass timber construction 7 stories and higher. The reason we're doing this is with the climate emergency, greater emphasis is now being put on embodied carbon emissions, and concrete promoting mass timber is one way to lower the embodied carbon of building forms that are traditionally made of mass timber or traditionally made of concrete. So a mass timber construction can reduce those embodied carbon emissions by 25 to 45%. So it's a fairly significant reduction. It also, there's a number of other benefits to mass timber, including much quicker construction, tidier, less waste from the construction site, and the facilitation of new jobs because it's much higher value add for the wood resources that we have in the province. The reason we're making the recommendations currently, and the primary one, is to allow the 7 inches of extra height per floor for mass timber construction. It was just from in our dialogues with industry understanding that mass timber is sort of put at a disadvantage relative to concrete construction because they do need an extra 7 inches in the sort of total floor thickness to accommodate both the structural, but more importantly, the mechanical and ventilation ducts. So in essence, without this, we are putting mass timber buildings in a position that, you know, they would have to have lower ceiling heights than a comparable building out of cement or concrete. The second one is to allow Director of Planning flexibility to allow variances in step backs where appropriate to minimize those because those can be problematic for mass timber construction. So in summary, that is the recommendation. It is to change the zoning and development bylaw, allow up to 7 inches extra height for mass timber buildings 7 stories and higher, and to provide the Director of Planning the discretion or the flexibility, not the outright removal of those other requirements, to allow for flexibility in the design and in particular the step backs. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Pander. Council, do you have any questions to staff? I see that you are indeed wanting to ask questions, and first on the list is Councillor Wiebe. Go ahead, Councillor Wiebe.
Yeah, my first question is, are we able to see more exposed mass timber? Are we changing some of the regulations on fire code to ensure that we can reduce costs and waste to ensure that it is meeting our green building standards?
That's not in scope for the recommendations we're making with this report. These are just the height and design flexibility. We are doing additional work with fire and the Chief Building Official's Office, as well as the province, to look at other changes we could do within the code to allow more exposed mass timber, but those are not yet ready for recommendation by staff at this time.
Okay, and recognizing that some of the mass timber buildings being built right now are still using cinder blocks and others, do you see that these changes with the increased floor level will enable more mass timber to be used in some of the current buildings being built or future buildings that are being built?
Indeed, yeah, and that is the intent, is to create a more level playing field. It's not an incentive, but there is considerable industry and developer interest in mass timber and in forms greater than 7 stories. And so this is one step that we can do to help remove some of the disincentives. And we do anticipate, given the developer interest, that this will help spur that. But additional changes are being worked on to further accelerate the adoption of mass timber.
And when do you think that council would be seeing that?
We have to work through some of the research on, and in particular around fire safety questions and concerns. We are hopeful that we might be able to get something to council, but before the end of this year. But again, we do need to review the research carefully to ensure that the recommendations we bring forward we would be confident that they'd be ensure public safety.
Okay, perfect. Because I know that some of the buildings right now are still using cement and or covering their exposed mass timber and CLT and cross laminate. It would be nice to see that brought forward. Really appreciate this report. Thank you.
I do want to point out, Councillor Wiebe, that there is a process called an alternate solutions process, where if a designer or a builder wants to vary from code in terms of encapsulation, for example, if they can prove, if they have engineers that can prove that they're doing it in a way that's safe and meets the intent of code, they can still be improved. And through that process, we started to see applications for greater than 12 stories, greater than 7 stories before we updated the code, because people could show through that process. So there still is a process by which people could do unencapsulated mass timber right now, but to enable it outright requires a bit more due diligence.
Have we approved any in the city of Vancouver so far?
With exposed, unencapsulated mass timber? Yep. I would have to check with Patrick Enright. He's our green building engineer. And Patrick, I'll turn that question over to you around exposed mass timber currently.
I can say yes, there are projects that are in the process of approval right now. One example that was currently on hold was it's a project in Cole Harbour called Terrace House that was going up to 19 stories. But again, those projects like that can be facilitated through that alternative solutions process.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Councillor Wiebe. Councillor Dominato, up to 5 minutes.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks to staff for the verbal update. Just a couple of quick questions. Just could you just explain the rationale just around the application of 7 stories and higher? Could you just elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, initially we're bringing forward 7 stories and higher because construction 6 stories and lower is very traditionally, especially in the multifamily sector, done with wood already. So we wanted to focus initially on a form that would be low permit volume, where we were really trying to facilitate this lower embodied carbon form of development. So it really was an opportunity to give us some experience with how the market responds, how if questions arise, we don't have a huge volume that we need to sort things out, and we're not anticipating problems, but we just thought this was the most important form that is traditionally built in concrete currently that we could now allow to do in mass timber.
Okay, great. And just clarifying, in terms of eligibility for the variances, I was just looking at the definition within Appendix A. What about hybrid mass timber projects? This is primarily for majority of it being mass timber. Where does hybrids fit in this?
Well, again, hybrids would be possible, but you would still need the majority of the construction to be mass timber. And part of the rationale is it's much easier to advance with something where you can have a clear definition and draw the line somewhere. So this is a form. We'll be looking at other changes that could allow and facilitate more hybrid construction, but it is these forms, and in particular the ones that want to do the floor slabs out of mass timber, which is one of the high concrete volume places within construction. So that's why we settled on that definition. Very clear and easy to define. Hybrid, we're interested in encouraging that, but again, it creates a lot of complexity. We wanted to move fast.
Okay. And then just last question with respect to the consultation, mass timber industry members, including the city's mass timber advisory committee, did this include, I'm assuming, but don't want to assume, industry representatives in terms of builders in the development sector? Because there are a lot of builders doing kind of leading work in this area, and I'm just were they part of that consultation?
Yep, indeed. So the Mass Timber Advisory Committee does include a broad representation from industry, including design, development, and construction. It also includes fire experts and staff expertise as well. In addition to the consultation we did with the advisory committee, we did direct consultation with that wide variety of development industry, the design community, the builders, and real estate marketers.
Fantastic. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Dominato. And that is it for questions, Mr. Pounder. Thank you so much. Again, we're going to call for speakers to this issue. Madam Clerk, before I call again, is there anyone on the line to speak to this item?
We do not have anybody on the line for this item.
Okay, so I'm going to call again. For speakers who wish to speak to council on this item, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by the participant code 34561, number sign, to get on the list. Madam Clerk, do we have any further or any speakers?
The answer is still no.
Okay, I'm going to call one more time. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 34561, number sign, to get on the list. And we're going to take a 5-minute break to see if anyone joins us. still? I think I see everybody, but yes, I think I see 7 there. So, Council, we have, oh, Madam Clerk, you've informed me of, but not verbally. So, are there any speakers on the list to speak?
Deputy Mayor Carr, it is the clerk here, and there are no speakers on the line.
Great, thanks so much.
Move the recommendation.
Just before we do that, seeing that there are no speakers, the speakers list is now closed. And since we have had no public comments, we are now closing the whole receipt of public comments and moving on to hearing closing comments, asking further questions of staff, and making a decision. Just before we move anything, does the applicant, which is our city, have any closing comments?
No, I think we've presented the rationale.
And does council have any further questions for staff? I see no one on the list, so Councillor Kirby-Yung, go ahead.
Yep, happy to move the recommendation, Madam Chair.
Great, and a seconder?
Fry.
Councillor Fry seconding, that's great. So you are now open to debating this. I do not see anyone else on the list to debate. So, oh wait, we do have some now. Councillor Fry, go ahead for up to 5.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to add a couple of comments in support of this. Obviously, as a green, super supportive of this building technology and the notion that we're shifting away from carbon intensive products like concrete and creating these carbon sequestering kind of options like timber construction. But also as the City of Vancouver's representative on the Union of BC Municipalities, I just want to underscore how significant this kind of building technology is for the rest of our province, and including a lot of communities throughout our province that really are struggling. And this could be a real shot in the arm, and it's a real opportunity to quote unquote buy local and really encourage British Columbia jobs and industries. So I'm very supportive of this. I'm very hopeful of what it can bring for the future. I had the distinction of attending the construction site when they were building the Tallwood Brock Commons out at UBC. And I have to say, just from a construction point of view and the impacts of construction, I've never seen a cleaner construction site. The large structural panels that they brought in and the fact that so much of the work was done off-site meant that it was a very minimally disruptive construction site. So I think the other happy side effect of this might be that a lot of Vancouverites will find that these projects, when they're being built in their neighborhoods, will find it a lot less disruptive, a lot less dirty, a lot less noisy, and obviously better for the environment. So happy to support this and look forward to seeing more mass timber construction in our city.
Thanks, Councillor Fry. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and that might be a perfect segue. As I was going to comment on the benefits of mass timber from both a local and a provincial perspective. I was speaking at the BC Natural Resource Forum last week on a panel about forestry and the interconnectedness between Vancouver and the rest of the province, and because we often don't see ourselves as a forest community, but in fact there's almost $1 billion spent in Vancouver and Metro Vancouver through 560 companies and suppliers that support the forest sector. And notably, there are builders that are going to be procuring from local BC companies for mass timber, including in the Kootenays. And so it speaks to supporting, it's not only just the economic benefits here in Vancouver, but also around the province to some of our other communities. But I think what people might tangibly experience, and there are builders in Vancouver who are going to be are leading some work and research in this area, is the opportunities that mass timber affords to address housing affordability, reducing construction times because of the prefab nature, but also some of the other benefits, including increased fire safety, energy efficiency, and durability. And so I think, housing affordability is top of mind for many, and so I was really pleased to support last year the doubling in height for mass timber buildings, and appreciate that staff are bringing forward these amendments. And I know that there'll be more incentives coming forward that stem from the SEEP report in the fall. But also to the point of sustainability, we've been talking in addition to housing affordability about climate change in the city, and that mass timber can play a key role in reducing carbon emissions, on helping meet our city targets. And so in that regard, I think it's a real positive and a win-win-win all around. And so happy to support the amendments and look forward to the further incentives that staff are working on to support the sector and using mass timber in design. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Dominato. And I see no other councillors on the queue to speak to this item. So, Madam Clerk, if you could take us to a vote, that would be great.
Point of privilege on the voter slips in favor, Chair.
Okay, Madam Clerk, note that. Yes, Madam Clerk, it seems my vote assist is not working. If you could vote for me in favor as well. Great, and Council, that does pass unanimously. Great, we are now, Council, moving on to item 3, which is the rezoning for 607 to 621 West 28th Avenue. Does any member of Council wish to declare conflict of interest on item 3? Seeing no one on the queue, the clerk will now read the application and summary of correspondence received.
There is an application by Shape Architecture to rezone 607 to 621 West 28th Avenue from single detached houses and duplexes district to multiple dwelling district to permit a townhouse development with a floor space ratio of up to 1.2. If rezoning is approved, a subsequent development permit process will entail review of a proposed form of development. The following correspondence has been received since referral to public hearing and prior to the close of the speaker list, and we see the public comments. 2 pieces of correspondence in support. This represents all correspondence received up to 5 p.m. today.
Thank you. I'm just going to read out for the first time. Are there any speakers for this item? Please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 34561, # to get on the list. And that phone number will be tweeted out and available. And Madam Clerk, if you could just let Council know whether there are any speakers on the line at this point.
It is the clerk here, Deputy Mayor Carr, and we have no speakers on the line.
Great. Okay, thank you. Council, we do have Amy McDonald, rezoning planner with the Rezoning Center of Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability, on the phone to present this application, and we'll go ahead with that unless someone moves to waive. I'm not seeing anyone move to waive, so Ms.
Move to waive the presentation? Sorry. Move to waive the presentation?
Okay, Councillor DiGenova, you've moved to waive. Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay, that was Councillor Boyle, I believe. Council, that you can debate this. I'm seeing no one on the line for that, so I'm just going to call yeas and nays. All those in favor of waiving the presentation say yay.
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 Any opposed say nay. Okay, thank you, Ms. McDonald. You may have questions at the end, but thank you for being here to present. And so I think, is the applicant team here on this matter to present?
We're here to take questions if required.
Okay, thank you so much. Council, are there any questions to either staff or the applicant? Okay. And again, that looks to me like no one's on the list there, so we're going to go ahead again and call to hear from members of the public. So if there are any speakers who wish to speak on this item, call toll free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 34561 #. And again, that number will be tweeted out and available on live stream. Madam Clerk, I'm seeing you have indicated to be no speakers. Perhaps you can inform council.
There are no speakers.
Great. I'm going to call again. If there are any speakers to this item, please call toll free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 34561 # to get on the list. Okay, and I will call a third time. And again, well, I guess clerk, you've indicated that there's no speakers yet? No?
Still no speakers.
Great. So for the third time, any speakers, please call toll free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 34561 # to get on the list. And council, we will take a 5-minute break to see if anyone joins that list. There are 6 of us, but please recognize council. I can only see 6 of you on the WebEx. So, there's a 7th. Thank you. Make sure that you are visible, so I know we have quorum. Madam Clerk, have we got anybody on the line to speak to this item?
No speakers.
Okay, see that there are no speakers. The speakers list is now closed. And as there have been few or no public comments received on this item after 5 p.m. today, I suggest we now close the receipt of public comments and move on to hearing closing comments, asking further questions, and making a decision. So first of all, staff, do you have any, I'm sorry, the applicant, do you have any closing comments?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. We don't have any closing comments.
Okay. And staff, do you have any closing comments?
Thank you, Council. Staff have no closing comments.
Thank you. And Council, do you have any questions to either, so you can't do it to the applicant, but to staff? And I'm not seeing anyone on the list to ask questions. So Council, you can now make a decision. We have to have a mover and a seconder.
So moved. Councillor DeGenova.
Thank you.
Second, Councillor Dominato.
Great. All right. And Council, you may debate this if you wish. And I'm seeing no one leaping to the queue to speak to this. So, Madam Clerk, if you could move us to a vote on this, thank you.
Point of privilege, Councillor DeGenova, I'll need
Yes.
a voter system bureau, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor DeGenova. And Councillor Fry, Councillor Blah, you have not yet voted. Okay, Council, that vote passes. There's one abstention, but otherwise it is unanimous. Great, good work. We are now moving on to item number, 4, which is a CD1 rezoning for 728-796 Main Street. First, Council, is there anyone wishing to declare conflict of interest on this item number 4? No, I'm not seeing anyone on the list. Clerk, could you please read the application and summary of correspondence received?
There is an application by Studio One Architecture to rezone 728 to 796 Main Street from Chinatown South to Comprehensive Development District to permit an 11-story mixed-use building containing 19 social housing units, 75 strata residential units, and ground floor commercial retail units. A maximum building height of 35.5 meter and a floor space ratio of 6.79 are proposed. The following correspondence has been received since referred to public hearing and prior to the close of the speakers list and receipt of public comments. 15 pieces of correspondence in support, 7 pieces of correspondence in opposition, and 2 pieces of correspondence dealing with other aspects of the application. This represents oral correspondence received up to 5 p.m. today.
Thank you so much, Clerk. I have been informed by the Madam Clerk that there are speakers, but just before we go to that, I will call for more speakers or people to call in if they wish to speak to us. If you do, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 34561 # to get on the list. And again, that number will be tweeted out and available on the live stream. So to begin, though, we do have Tin Fan, rezoning planner, Rezoning Center of Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability, on the phone to present the application. And Council, just so that you know, I believe I've been informed that there's 7 speakers on the line to speak to this item. You still can choose to waive if you like, but in the absence of seeing anyone make that motion, I'll ask.
Move to waive presentation, Councillor DeGenova.
Pardon me?
Move to waive presentation, Councillor DeGenova.
Oh, okay. I would need a seconder.
I would like to see the presentation.
Okay. So I don't have a seconder. We have a request to see the presentation.
That's fine. I'll withdraw.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor DiGenova. Again, Teen Fan, if you are available on the line now to make the presentation to council, please go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is Teen. Just confirming that you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can see your presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. So my name is Teen, rezoning planner for this application. The proposal before you is an 11-story mixed-use building containing strata residential, social housing, and ground floor commercial. The site is located in an area with cultural, social, and historic importance to racialized communities. Outlined in red is the subject site on the northeast corner of Main and Union Streets. Labeled in blue, we have a 2-story commercial building, home to the Brick House Pub, constructed in 1910. Next to it, we have a vacant lot, and then a 3-story building constructed in 1899 with 24 designated single-room occupancy units, or SROs. At the lane is a 1925 building with the historic address of 207 Union Street. None of these buildings are listed on the Heritage Register. South of the site is Nora Hendricks Place, a 3-story temporary modular housing building, and the Georgia and Dunsmuir Viaducts. Chinatown is a National Historic Area, and it includes 2 zoning districts, the HA1A and the HA1. The subject site is located in the HA1A, or Chinatown South, zoning district. The zone focuses on retaining the cultural and historic elements of the area while still enabling contemporary new development that is compatible with the Chinatown HA1A design guidelines. Just north is the Chinatown Historic Area, or HA1 district, emphasizing heritage conservation in which smaller scale, newer development is to respond to the cultural context. Located south are blocks covered under the Northeast Falls Creek Plan, with the eastern block known as 898 Main Street. Here, the emphasis is on reestablishing a focal point for the Black community in Vancouver, including a cultural center, childcare facility, and commercial space. The enabling policy for this application is the 2011 rezoning policy for Chinatown South, setting out provisions to go beyond the HA1A base zoning. The policy allows for 150 feet building heights between Kiefer and Union Streets and 120 feet for the rest of HA1A. There's no floor space ratio limit, and there's no required maximum site width. There's also a choice of use on the ground floor. The initial rezoning application was submitted in 2017 under the then existing rezoning policy for Chinatown South. Council repealed this policy in 2018 after hearing community concerns that new development was out of scale with the current context. At that time, Council directed staff to continue with the review of this application for 728 Main Street under the rescinded policy since it was already in progress. The application today is therefore being considered under the 2011 rezoning policy. The proposal has been revised over time to better align with the base zoning and the design guidelines for the area. The site is located on the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. The area has a complex history for communities who have faced discrimination and displacement, including the Chinese, Black, Japanese, and Italian communities. City strategies and council policies have moved towards greater and more meaningful cultural recognition in which the cultural and historical legacy of communities are placed at the center. Examples include the Chinatown Neighborhood Plan and the Northeast Falls Creek Plan. Further, the Vancouver Heritage Program and the Culture Shift strategy have broadened our understanding of culture and better acknowledges the intangible assets of communities. This photo was taken of the Main and Union intersection in 1971 during the construction of the viaducts. Vancouver's Chinese community settled in the 1880s, forming Chinatown. Vancouver's Black community settled in the early 1900s. These images show the area known as Hogan's Alley and the neighboring buildings. These blocks were demolished for the construction of the viaducts in the 1970s. And by that time, the effects of disinvestment and decline severely impacted the economic viability of a once thriving area. The Planning Department acknowledges that previous policies were harmful and the need to revisit these policies through reconciliation. Through the Northeast Falls Creek Plan and other policies, we are working to create space for the Black community in Vancouver. Two of the three buildings on site were presented to the city and to the Heritage Commission. We have a building from 1899, which previously operated as a boarding house for railway workers, a grocery store, and a cafe. It currently has 24 designated SRA units, or single room accommodation units. The building contains some original elements, but significant renovations and structural deterioration have altered the heritage integrity of this aging building. It is not listed on the register. 207 Union Street, in a building that once existed at 209 Union Street, formed a cluster of establishments. It was a place of socialization for the Black community and the Chinese community from 1905 until the 1970s. Businesses that once operated here include a taxi stand and the Southern-style restaurant Vi's Chicken and Steakhouse. Nora Hendricks, grandmother of Jimi Hendrix, was a resident in the neighborhood and a cook at Vi's. The former owner constructed a commemoration piece for Jimi Hendrix, which has been recently moved to the lane. The nearby temporary modular housing is named in commemoration of Nora Hendricks. The Heritage Commission concluded that significant alterations have diminished its heritage elements. Retention is not being proposed. However, the owner will reuse existing materials where possible and work with the Black community to develop a commemorative piece to honor the history of the area. In 2017, an initial application was submitted for 150 feet building height. The open house saw 110 attendees, and the Chinatown Historic Area Planning Committee, also known as CHAPAC, and the Urban Design Panel both recommended resubmission. In 2018, Council rescinded the rezoning policy for Chinatown, but allowed this as the one and only to proceed. In 2019, the applicant then revised their initial proposal to better align with the Chinatown context. The height was lowered to 11 stories from 15, and it was unanimously supported by CHAPAC and the design panel with suggested design modifications. A few months later, in January 2020, the applicant's addendum incorporated design comments from CHAPAC and the panel for a stronger corner and vertical expression, reminiscent of buildings in Chinatown. These changes form the application for which Council is viewing today. Staff also want to recognize the time it has taken to work with communities and respond through design and through a process to refocus efforts. We would like to thank and acknowledge the owner and the applicant for their openness to really work with and respond to community input and feedback since 2014. Their flexibility has produced the application we have before Council today. The proposal before you is an 11-story building at 116.5 feet height. There's 75 units of strata residential, 19 units of social housing, and ground floor commercial. The floor space ratio is 6.79, and there's underground parking accessed from the lane. This project would generate some 329 construction jobs. This image shows the existing context looking east. And here's the proposal if we are to imagine the site with an 11-story building. The current building design is more in line with the design guidelines, which call for the contemporary new development to fit into the context, but are not required to mimic existing buildings in the area. The rezoning policy allows for 150 feet, and the district schedule allows for 90 feet. At 116.5 feet, the proposal is only 2 stories above the base zoning and doesn't yet reach the height of the rezoning policy. The proposal is also expressed as a series of individual buildings with narrow frontages for an incremental pattern of narrow lots that are typical of Chinatown. We can see here the frontages are less than 50 feet. A more permanent vertical brick expression provides a break in the street wall height. This is to mark the corner of Main and Union Street as one enters Chinatown. The sawtooth profile creates varied heights rather than one single massive development. Brick material is also incorporated onto the facade and it wraps to the lane. The corner unit will have entrances facing the lane and reference the historical significance of Hogan's Alley. This revised proposal was unanimously supported at CHAPAC in the design panel. Staff also support the height, which is well incorporated into the overall design and the corner condition. Further design development is required at the next stage, including architectural refinements to improve the contextual fit. A number of key housing policies guide this proposal, including Housing Vancouver and the SRO Revitalization and Action Plan. These set a goal to replace the 7,200 SRA designated rooms with self-contained social housing units at shelter rates. The Downtown Eastside Plan also seeks to replace the SROs at shelter rates with a priority for singles. Finally, the SRA bylaw regulates the conversion and the demolition of SRO rooms to manage the rate of change for the low-income housing stock. This is intended to protect low-income and marginalized renters. An owner seeking to convert or demolish a building with SRA-designated rooms must obtain approval for an SRA permit. Approvals of SRA permits rest with Council. And while city policies strive to achieve a one-for-one replacement or better, each site's zoning, the context, and ownership structure are considered. Staff review each application made under the SRA bylaw, including a pro forma analysis to assess if the social housing has maximized unit delivery and affordability. For this application, staff support the replacement of the 24 SROs with 19 self-contained social housing units delivered turnkey to the city. The existing SRO building has 6,600 square feet of floor area, and the future social housing component would see the floor area double to 13,000 square feet. Social housing units improve livability and secure affordability that is not currently present in the existing SRA building. This report also recommends issuance of an SRA conversion demolition permit to enable this project per the SRA bylaw. The 17th studio and the 2 one-bedroom units align with the policy goals for singles at shelter rates. 33% of the 19 social housing units will be rented at the BC Housing income limits. Staff will also pursue deeper affordability as the project progresses, prioritizing units at shelter rates. The final affordability will come to Council for approval as part of a future lease to a nonprofit operator. If approved, all units will be secured through a housing agreement, and that would prohibit the stratification and the sale of units for the life of the building. For illustrative purposes, the table here shows the rental rates for units at the shelter component of income assistance and units at Hills rates. A tenant relocation plan is required for tenants who lived in the building at the time of application. The compensation and supports offered by the applicant meet the SRA bylaw tenant relocation plan requirements. Staff will monitor and review its implementation, and a final tenant relocation plan will be required prior to occupancy. Almost 3,000 notifications were circulated in traditional Chinese and English for the second open house, with 38 attendees. There was support for a reduction in height and building design. The community questioned why a rezoning was permitted in Chinatown, and we heard that the Black community was insufficiently consulted and concerns about the loss of cultural assets connected to the Black community. Public feedback represented a further opportunity to initiate deeper and specific engagement with the Black community, and through this, reaffirm the city's commitment to the revitalization of Hogan's Alley. This feedback opened up deeper dialogue over the last year and a half between the owner and the community to better integrate living culture into spaces. The Planning Department also acknowledges the importance of developing policies with an equity, anti-racist, and inclusivity lens. Over the last year and a half, city staff and the applicant further connected with Hogan's Alley Society, a nonprofit organization that advocates for Black communities in Vancouver. It was identified that the development could provide opportunities for public and cultural spaces that honor Hogan's Alley. As such, the applicant has committed to a right of first refusal to the Society for use of one of the 6 commercial units. This represents one way to further reestablish the history of the Black community in the area. A letter of commitment from the owner is shown in Appendix G. The applicant team is also here to speak to that. It was also recognized that this site would be appropriate for further commemoration that honors the Black community led by the Society. These contributions are part of a wider call to action for cultural redress. Details of the commemoration will be part of a future process between the owner and the Society. The 19 turnkey social housing units will be delivered to the city and represents the in-kind CAC at $7.5 million. With $2 million in DCLs, the public benefit package is $9.5 million. This application has been shaped such that the height, density, and design components are in line with the 2011 rezoning policy for Chinatown South and the design guidelines. Staff support an 11-story mixed-use building containing 19 units of social housing, with 1 secured through the right of first refusal. The proposal further integrates opportunities to collaborate with the Black community throughout the next stages of the development. In conclusion, staff recommend approval, subject to conditions in Appendix B. Staff and the applicant team are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
And thank you very much. So we will hear if the applicant team is here to present or speak to this application. Who do we have from the applicant team?
Hi, you have Dan Watson here to speak from the applicant team.
Great, Mr. Watson, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Dan Watson. I'm a senior planner at Puni Group, and we've been leading the community engagement effort with Bonus on this project for the past 4 years. I'm here today to speak on behalf of the project team and have with me Carrie Bonus from Bonus Development and Jim Wong and Shohei Tutunjian from Studio One Architecture. I want to thank staff for their detailed presentation and would like to take this opportunity to speak to some of the unique features of this proposal and the engagement process that we feel should be celebrated. In particular, there are 4 features I'd like to highlight. The commemorative piece we're developing in collaboration with the descendants of Vi Moore and the Vancouver Mural Festival, support for legacy retail at the Brick House, the incorporation of heritage elements, including the reuse of bricks from the existing Brick House building and taxi stand, and the right of first refusal agreement with the Hogan's Alley Society. Sorry, I can't see. Is my presentation up on the screen?
Yes, your presentation is. Well, we're seeing recommendation. Actually, it's not. Is that the last slide? Madam Clerk, do we have, is that the beginning of the next one, or is that the final slide?
We are, it is the clerk here. We're just getting the applicants up on the screen now.
Point of procedure,
okay, no.
Madam Chair, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, that's okay. Councillor Bly, go ahead.
And I apologize for not bringing it up sooner. I just noticed at the last moment that I'm not sure that that presentation by staff has been broadcast on the live stream, nor is this presentation. So just wanted to flag that.
Yeah, Madam Clerk, maybe you could verify. I thought I was watching it on the live stream rather than the WebEx. So, Madam Clerk, can you just verify that this is being broadcast on the live stream?
It is the clerk here, Deputy Mayor Carr, and it appears to be fine now on both screens, the live stream as well as the WebEx.
Great. Oh, thanks, Councillor Bly, for bringing that to our attention. And go ahead, Mr. Watson.
Thank you.
You're on time. Oh, yes. The building, looking at it at the corner, from the corner view is up on the screens now.
Perfect. So we'll go to the next slide, please, the timeline. So speaking first to the formal engagement process, the proposal has evolved significantly since the first inquiries were made to the city in 2013 until today. The lowered height and changes to the design reflect a response to feedback from city panels, including the Urban Design Panel and the Chinatown Heritage Area Planning Committee, and engagement with the community over the past 7 years, including conversations with representatives of the African descent and Chinese communities. Next slide, please. We were fortunate through our engagement and conversations with the Hogan's Alley Society to be introduced to two of the grandchildren of Vi Moore, whose chicken and steakhouse was located on Union Street next to the alley, and was an important part of the community that made up Hogan's Alley. We're now working with Vi's grandchildren and the Vancouver Mural Festival to develop a meaningful commemorative piece to celebrate her legacy there, and that mural would run along the length of that same alley. One thing that's particularly important for us is that this commemorative piece will be driven by the Moore family and the artists they choose to work with, and the project team is excited about this ongoing collaboration. Next slide, please. Another element we wanted to highlight is the idea of legacy retail and the retention of heritage elements. The project team has sought to maintain elements of the built heritage of the site by incorporating bricks from the Brick House building and the taxi stand building into the design. Bonus has also been in conversation with Leo Chow, the owner of the Brick House Bar, to support him to reopen after development. Next slide, please. And one of the most under-recognized things that we've learned through our engagement is how much the dispersion of the Black community from this area, beyond the loss of built heritage, social ties, and homes, also meant significant loss of economic opportunity. The project team has had a number of conversations with the Hogan's Alley Society and previously with the Hogan's Alley Working Group over the years to help inform this proposal. Through this engagement, Bonus has agreed to a right of first refusal agreement to lease the southeast corner commercial unit in the development to a business recommended by the Hogan's Alley Society. The project team values the importance of having businesses operated by the African descent community at this location and are excited to continue to work together to support the Hogan's Alley Society's efforts to strengthen this community. Next slide, please. Bonus and the project team have sought to recognize the unique nature of this site, particularly for its significance to Vancouver's Black community, through commemorative work and supporting economic opportunities, while supporting opportunities for legacy retail and reuse of heritage elements. We hope the Council will support this development and that these elements we've discussed will be a stepping stone for the ambitious plans that the Hogan's Alley Society and the African descent community have for the area, and that it'll be a catalyst for bigger things to come. To close out, Carrie Bonus from Bonus Developments is going to say a few words. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Bonus.
Thank you, Council, for considering our proposal today. We recognize this is a unique site, and it's located at the center of many cultures and communities. I have a lot of fond memories crossing town, unbeknownst to my parents, with my cousins and exploring a foreign place that was Chinatown. Unique smells and things. So we're very nostalgic about this site, but I've got to admit, so Vancouverite, born and raised here, I was completely ignorant about the importance of this area with respect to the African descent community. And it's been a personal growth experience learning about it. And we're honored that our project can be one of the first to shine a spotlight on Hogan's Alley and the existence of the African descent community. And I encourage everybody to watch Secret Vancouver, Return to Hogan's Alley. It's a short documentary. It's a wealth of information, and I'm plugging that because I think we really need everybody to know what we have here. We've worked diligently for a number of years to incorporate the Chinatown communities, business communities, all stakeholders, including the African descent community. We're really proud of what we've done. Planner Teen Fan and Teresa Donald have been instrumental to really engage further all the necessities in terms of getting the feedback, working on the architecture along with Studio One and the Puni Group, and just a shout out to all of them, thanking them for what we have before them. Before all of you, we're proud of what we've done, and we hope we can help grow this area and revitalize it, and hope we'll get your approval accordingly. Thanks for your time.
Great. And thank you. And Mr. Bonus, could you just make sure that you do turn your video off?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. You kind of surprised us all. It's the first time that we've seen the applicant on video, but that would be good.
Hopefully I didn't scare you.
No, it was
right.
it was all good and wonderful, except it might mess up the logistics from our end. So
Okay, sorry.
not a problem. Thanks so much. Council, this is your opportunity to ask questions of either staff or the applicant, and please remember that this is your only opportunity to ask questions of the applicant. I see I've got councillors on the list, and I will advance first. Councillor Fry for up to 5 minutes.
Thanks, Chair. Question for the applicant then. I see the the offer to the Hogan's Alley Society in the package. I don't see a reply from them. What was the general sort of interaction with Hogan's Alley Society on this offer, and are they accepting this offer?
I guess I'll, or Dan, I'll speak.
Yeah, sure. I can.
Okay,
Yeah, I can speak quickly to it, Carrie. Yeah, they told us that they were thrilled. I don't want to put words in anybody else's mouth, but so I don't want to speak for them on that. But they indicated that they were quite happy about the right of first refusal offer that we put forward, and we've had a few conversations subsequent to that offer about the logistics of it, how we actually implement it, how a business is actually selected, and those conversations will be ongoing, but. At this point, our understanding is they're quite happy to accept the offer.
Okay, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. Thank you. My next question then is for staff, and it's on the subject of the SRA replacement. I'm familiar with the housing stock that's there now. It's primarily foreign language students. Obviously, there wouldn't be many right now, but typically it's foreign language students who are here studying English. So, given that there's not an existent sort of low-income population that would otherwise be displaced to the streets or what have you, has staff contemplated, instead of housing on site, to take sort of cash in lieu, and might that be better served, elsewhere as part of a larger purpose-built, supportive or social housing project, or are we tied to the SRA bylaw as it is to do it on site?
Hi, Councillor Fry. This is Teen from Rezoning. We'll pass that to Allison Dunnett, Senior Housing Planner.
Thank you, Teen. Yeah, Allison Dunnett here. No, we hadn't explored that, Councillor Fry. We have, through the evolution of this project, always been looking to kind of abide by the SRA bylaw and look to get replacement units. That's generally the priority of the city, given the level of need for singles units in the community. So we're very pleased with the outcome in this project in terms of getting 19 units.
Yeah, and so am I, for sure. I'm just wondering if that money, if cash in lieu would be almost get us more housing.
I guess just to say typically, and I'm not sure if planning department staff are here about differentiation between taking a cash CAC versus an in-kind, but generally given the immediacy of the delivery of the turnkey units, we both are able to bring those units on stream quicker than we receive cash and then need to purchase land or find another area to land them. Given the high level of need for SRO replacement units in the downtown east side, we see this as a real positive move to get them replaced on site at this location.
Awesome. Thanks, Ms. Dunnett. That's completely satisfactory to me. Thank you very much. I'm good.
Thanks, Councillor Fry. And Councillor Swanson, over to you.
Yeah, I have four for the applicant and 2 for staff. So the first one for staff, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm just verifying it's 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. First one for the applicant, will this be a pet-friendly building?
Oh, I'll take that. We haven't actually discussed that, so really it'll be up to the strata to decide for itself with respect to the market apartments. With the SROs, it'll be a separate air parcel, so we have no right to dictate anything with regard to pets. So it's really
okay,
beyond our scope.
So for the right of first refusal for the Hogan's Alley Society, at what rent? Will they get a discount on the rent, or will they have to pay the same rent as everybody else?
It'll be dictated by market.
So market rent.
Market rents.
Okay, so it's not really a great deal. Will the social housing be turnkey to the city?
Yes.
And will there be a rich door and a poor door?
I don't follow you. What do you mean by that?
A separate entrance for the poor and one separate entrance for the condo owners?
We don't distinguish having entrances on the basis of socioeconomic class. So If you're asking will there be a separate entrance for the SROs, there'll be 3 groups of ownership at this building. One will be a separate air parcel for the SROs, the separate and the second ownership group will be a second air parcel for the Strata retail, comprising of 6 retail units, which will have 6 separate entrances. And then for the third ownership group, which will be Strata market housing, there'll be the 8th entrance. So much as you see in multi-occupant premises, like a 4-plex, you'll have 4 separate entrances. Or in row housing, you might see 10 separate entrances. So that's consistent with that. And we intend to have 8 separate entrances. So there'll be no distinction between socioeconomic class.
But the people who have the SRO units won't use the same entrance as the others.
Every ownership group will have its own entrance.
Okay, that's good, thanks. So for staff, I thought we had a policy of 1-for-1 replacement of SROs. So in this case, we should get 24 or 27. It said there were 27 rooms. So I'm wondering why we just have 19 getting replaced.
Thank you, Councillor Swanson, for the question. I'm going to pass it again to Allison Dennett over in Housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Teen. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, the SRO replacement target in Housing Vancouver is to deliver 2,000 new self-contained units. An SRO replacement, while the goal in redevelopment of an SRA building is to maximize the delivery of shelter rate units and ideally achieve 1-for-1, depending on the scale, location, and level of operating supports provided at the time of rezoning, that will shape the proportion that we are able to replace on site. So the replacement housing for the designated room is managed through the Downtown East Side local area plan, where the principle is 1-for-1 replacement, but what is achieved is ultimately shaped by what's possible on the site.
So the 1-for-1 replacement doesn't mean 1-for-1 at shelter rates, obviously, because you're saying 2/3 will probably be at Hills unless you can extract some more dough from somebody.
So under the zoning development bylaw for this area, the minimum requirement is to secure the 30% at Hills. As staff have indicated in the report, we will be working through the process as we move along through development permit and on to finding an operator to secure as many units at shelter rate as possible.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Swanson. And Councillor Blott, you're next for up to 5.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just have a question to the applicant. In regards to the commercial spaces and the sort of plan, how they've been planned out, I'm curious what type of businesses or commercial tenants you hope to attract. And I believe, is there 6 spaces, did you say?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
I can repeat it. That's no problem. I'm curious about the commercial spaces. Just to confirm, I heard that there's 6. Read in the report there's 6 spaces. Can you confirm that's accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. And then can you confirm the average ceiling height in each of the commercial spaces?
Sorry, I don't have that information right offhand, but we did rejig everything, redesign to be consistent with the feedback from the community and the revised OCP for Chinatown, which would include mezzanines and so forth.
Okay, staff may have that information. So what type of commercial tenants would you hope to attract to this building?
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with our company, but we a large component of our properties is specializing in street level retail. So we believe it's imperative for the success of a retail street to have an eclectic and diverse mix of uses. So we're always cognizant of that. And so if there can be a synergistic between all the all the occupants, it'd be great, and that's what we'll strive for.
Okay. So your plan is to maintain ownership of the commercial spaces in your portfolio?
Ideally, if from day one that was the intention, and if the economic, if we can economically, we certainly will, and that's our intention as of today's date.
Okay. Okay, that's great. That's actually all of my questions for the applicant. I just have a couple of questions of staff, and not sure if you have the ceiling height on hand. I can dig back through the report. It came to me to ask that question.
Hi, Council.
Hi.
Hi, Councillor Bly. It's Teen here from rezoning. We do have the ceiling heights for the commercial retail spaces. On the ground floor, it's 15.5 feet, and then the retail mezzanine above that is 10 feet plus 1 inch. So we have roughly about 25 feet on the ground floor plus the retail mezzanine.
And a mezzanine. Okay. Thank you. Just a couple more questions regarding the original or the sort of, the original Chinatown South policy that this application was grandfathered in. I'm just curious if well, you mentioned that council provided direction to staff that this application ought to be considered under that policy. Could you tell me when that decision happened, and did it happen publicly in a meeting or public hearing?
Hi, Councillor Bly. It's Teen here from rezoning. That decision happened at the end of May 2017. I think it was referred at that point, and then it went to public hearing in the summer of 2017. So, and that was in a public hearing forum, so it was available for the wider public, and it was a decision. Yeah.
Okay, and so my final question is, do we anticipate any other applications that will be brought forward to this council that will be sort of grandfathered in under the original rezoning policy for Chinatown South?
Hi, Councillor Bly. We don't. The decision at that time in 2017 was very explicit that this rezoning policy would be deleted and eliminated. Therefore, no other rezonings in Chinatown South would be permitted. So this was given sort of exceptional circumstance. So we don't anticipate because there is no rezoning policy. Thank you.
Oh, okay, and sorry, I have one quick follow-up question based on that. I noted in the rescinding of that policy that that staff no longer recommended using social housing or below market housing as a negotiation tool, and I just would be interested to know the context in why staff would recommend that, not necessarily directly associated with this application, but it is because that was the original policy. I hope that's clear.
I think so. I think, Councillor Bly, what you're asking is what happens to the social housing if there isn't a rezoning policy, if we can no longer negotiate for that.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's no longer a rezoning policy, sites that would come in through a development permit under the base zoning, and base zoning doesn't permit us to negotiate for additional public benefits. So the decision of council at the time in 2017 recognized that the community expressed concern with additional height and density, and that the community also expressed that the additional height and density through a rezoning policy was not enough to justify the public benefits that would be extracted from that site through a rezoning. So I hope that answers your question.
That is your time, Councillor Bly.
Thank you.
Councillor Kirby-Yung, you're next for up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. My questions were about retail or asked by Councillor Bly, so I'll move on. I just want to follow up on the affordability question that was raised earlier by one of my fellow councillors around sort of the potential rates in these units, and just confirm that my understanding is correct, and this is a question to staff, that the CAC contribution is the in-kind turnkey delivery of the social housing units, but that really the affordability is up to the city to determine in working with either securing an operator or through federal or provincial partnerships for operating subsidies. Is that right? That the affordability is really in the city's hands?
Allison Dunnett, yeah, that is correct, Councillor Kirby-Yung.
Okay, and so the amenity here is the actual delivery in terms of the value of the air parcel and the construction of the units, right? Correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kirby-Yung. And go ahead, Councillor Wiebe. Did you remove yourself?
Yes, my question was asked by Sarah Kirby-Yung. I was just trying to wonder why we were not being able to get the affordability rates to meet the 488 that they had currently in the building.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. Councillor Boyle, then you're next. Up to 5.
Thank you, Chair. And my first question is to the applicant. I'm hoping to hear more about the engagement with the Hogan Valley Society. Council has, or some of the correspondence that's come in has said that there hasn't been sufficient engagement there. And so I'm just hoping to hear from the applicant about what that looked like and you know, any response you might have to why we're hearing that that there wasn't enough engagement.
Hi, Dan Watson here from Puni Group. I'll take this one. Yeah, I think we have had ongoing conversations with the members of the African descent community and the Chinese community from the start of this process. And I would say that they haven't been fully formalized until the last year or so. So the right of first refusal agreement and working with the descendants of Vi Moore and moving that mural conversation along. And so the formal agreements that we have so far, or the more tangible elements of that engagement, the things that have come out of it, happened after the last community open house. And so it's possible that we have a project website where we put some of these details up on our end and have circulated some information to the community with updates on that. So it's possible that the information hasn't fully filtered out yet to the community about some of the engagement that's happened since that last open house.
Okay, can I follow that up? Just wondering if any of that engagement was specifically with the Hogan's Alley Society.
Yes, it was, absolutely. And it was direct conversations with them that led to the right of first refusal agreement, which they've accepted, and we're in ongoing conversations with them about how we actually implement that agreement.
Okay, I have a question as well for staff. So staff, I'm wondering if you can speak to, my understanding is that the requirement to replace the SRO units is required as part of our policy. And so I guess I was surprised to see that as the CAC when it already is a requirement. Can you speak to the balance of those two things? If we require their replacement, why is that also considered the contribution, the additional contribution to balance out the land lift of the project?
So Alison Dunnett here. The SRO replacement policy does require the applicant to engage with staff in a review of the project. And so performa analysis is conducted on what is feasible to be achieved in terms of replacing SRO units on site. So that work has been done by city staff. And in that analysis, what was achievable was the maximum 19 units. And that's based on performa analysis and the design of the site and kind of fit with the building. So yeah.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I guess I'm trying to get at the economics of it. My assumption had been that if the replacement of those units was required, then it wouldn't be counted as a voluntary CAC because it's already required and would be factored into the economics of the building. So I guess I'm trying to figure out why it counts as both a requirement to replace them, but also is in lieu of a CAC. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess, and I'll try to be simplistic, and I'll invite anybody from planning if they want to engage in this as well. Just to say that in getting the 19 units of social housing on site that count as a replacement for the SRA, that completely takes up the available public benefit space. And so there isn't any additional land lift that could go to another CAC on the site.
Okay, but I guess the requirement to replace them wouldn't have been factored into a lower land value in the first place? Sorry, I'm not an economist asking economic questions, so let me ponder that. I know we have speakers. Maybe I'll come back on the list after speakers. Thanks for trying to explain that to me.
Yeah, and I don't know if we have real estate services on who are the ones who generally do this work, and I would invite them to speak to it.
Great.
That's good for now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Boyle. And Councillor Weep, you are back on the list. Go ahead.
Yeah. And first, I like Councillor Boyle's question of understanding the land economics of the fact that if you had an SRA, the land would be decreased in value, and it'd be great to hear from our staff a response to that. My question is, recognizing this is a cultural hotspot, what communication happened with the Chinese community? And can you give us kind of some of the elements that were incorporated into the building? This is for the proponent.
Hi, I can speak broadly to engagement with the Chinese community. There has been a number of conversations through our open houses, which were heavily attended by residents of the Chinese community and people involved in community groups associated with Chinatown. We spoke to a number of groups in the business community as well, the Chinatown BIA and the Merchants Association, as well as the existing tenant in the brick house, who is Chinese descent and an operator of the business there that Bonus has been working with to support to come back into the project after it's complete. And somebody from Studio One can speak to the design of the building and how it's evolved in response to Chinatown design guidelines and input from the community.
Hi, it's Shovik here from Studio One. Yes, we've been the project has been with the meeting with the CHAPAC, and it was approved. We had some comments and we had responded to that. The project is the way it responds to responding to the size of the volumes that the sawtooth that we saw before in Teen's presentation as well, and the narrow sizes of the vertical volumes that are there. It has a solid middle portion of the building, with punched windows, and a very vibrant commercial area at the ground floor that spills out sort of to the street. Also, the crown, sort of the canopy and the crown at the top of the building also reflects the Chinatown vernacular as we see it in the area.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are all my questions.
Great. Okay, Council, I'm seeing no other councillors on the list, so it is time for us to hear from the public. I'm going to just call out the number just before we proceed with those on the line. Anyone who wishes to speak to council on this item, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by the participant code 34561 $, and that phone number will be tweeted out and available on live stream. Madam Clerk, you have confirmed with me that there are speakers on the line. I believe quite a number of them, but I don't see that you've indicated that speaker number 1 is on the line. So can you verify that, please?
Yes, that is correct. Speaker number 1 is not on the line.
Okay, then we're going to move to speaker number 2, Adrian Sinclair. Is Adrian Sinclair on the line?
Hi there, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine. Go ahead, you have up to 5 minutes.
Great, I'm just going to take probably 2. So I just wanted to kick things off. So I'm with the Vancouver Mural Festival. I'm the Director of Engagement there, and I help produce the community projects that we do throughout the city. And it was really interesting. So we got a call about a year and a half ago, actually, from the Puni Group, and they told us that they were doing community engagement around this development. And we never gotten a call like this before, and it was quite brilliant because the first questions were, or the first things they told us were how much homework they had done in the area and how much engagement they had already done with the community. Usually when we get called, we need to do a lot of education work with the client to help them understand, especially if it's a developer, to help them understand how long these things take to do really authentic, incredible community engagement. And so we found out that they had already spoken to the descendants of Vise, Chicken Steak Savai herself, her grandkids, multiple interviews, and they're already really well educated, I guess, on lots of the complexities of the neighborhood. So it was really refreshing, to be honest. And so what was really interesting is when they reached out, we already had been planning a 3-year project with the Hogan's Alley Society to create a visibility project with multiple murals in the area, extensive community engagement, and to do a bunch of amazing work in the neighborhood with all Black artists over the next 3 years. Big plan. And I told them this, and then we both had this moment being like, well, they're like, well, we've engaged the descendants, and we want to do this artwork on the building. And so it sort of went from there. And so I just want to say, I know Crystal Paribu, our curator of the project, is going to describe this project that's happening over the next 3 years, and this is part of it. But I just want to say, I think that developers in the city, in addition to CAC and social housing requirements, it would be amazing to see developers follow this way of doing things, and to actually, for best practices, would be to engage in the cultural and historic communities of neighborhoods, and to find ways to do, whether it's public art or murals or anything like that, and to do really strong community engagement, not just public art, multiple years in advance of what they do. And it would be an amazing best practices for all developers to do this kind of thing. So I'm hoping that other developers take notice and see this kind of process and try to follow it. So that's it for me. And I support the whole project. I think it's great. Thanks a lot.
And thank you for taking the time to speak to us. It's very important. You don't have any questions from council, but again, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Okay, thanks.
Great. And speaker number 3 on the line, I believe, is Randy Clark. Randy Clark, if you're on the line, this is your time to speak. Madam Clerk, maybe you want to verify for me that Randy Clark is still on the line, speaker 3?
Yes, I can verify he's on the line, so we just need to make sure the unmuting is taking place properly.
Great, thank you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear
Hello?
you perfectly.
Oh,
yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us? Great. Go ahead. You have
yes,
up to 5
I can.
minutes.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Carr, members of City Council, city staff, and guests, my name is Randy Clark, and I currently live in New Westminster, and I am a former resident of what is today referred to as Hogan's Alley, having lived in the area from 1965 to 1969. And our home was located at 230 Union Street. My grandparents owned and operated Vise Chicken and Steakhouse, which was located across the street at 209 Union for over 30 years. My grandmother, Vi Moore, was voted and recognized as one of the first recipients of the Remarkable Women of Distinction Award in 2008. She was a kind and generous individual who supported numerous individuals within the community, in particular women, through employment and other activities related to the restaurant business. My grandmother was a strong supporter of the Fountain Chapel Church and was a longtime friend of Nora Hendricks, who at one time lived at 207 Union Street. My ties to the Strathcona community have spanned more than 5 decades. 3 of my siblings attended Strathcona and later on Britannia Secondary School. And during part of my teaching career, encompassing 35 years in the Vancouver School District, I was a staff member at Britannia Secondary School and later had the opportunity and the honor to serve there as principal. 3 years ago, I took part in the Northeast Falls Creek Planning Session workshops, focusing on reimaging what Hogan's Alley could look like once the current viaduct was dismantled. Soon after, Dan Watson, on behalf of the Bonus Development Group, contacted me, hoping to learn more about the community and specifically what former members of the Black community valued regarding their experience living in the area. I was also able to ask questions about the plans for the development on the corner of Union and Main, and over time have been pleased with the 94-unit proposal as it sits with you today. The 19 social housing units, opportunities for small businesses, and honoring aspects of Vancouver's first Black community all stood out for me. As you have already been told, work has already begun connecting with the Vancouver Mural Festival and gathering historic visuals to incorporate as part of the presentation of this new addition to our community. I do see this project as a precursor to the overall development of the 200 Union Block and the development of the larger community as a whole. We know this is coming. We know how impactful the removal of the viaduct will be, along with the addition of health services, new roads, new parks, and a multitude of affordable housing opportunities. I fully support this project moving forward. Thank you.
And thank you. Yeah, wonderful to hear that history. And you do have questions. So Councillor Fry, up to 5 minutes with questions.
Thanks, Chair. Mr. Clark, nice to hear your voice. It's been a while.
Good to hear yours.
So we did, full disclosure, we did spend some time working together on the Hogan's Alley Working Group and then part of the Northeast Falls Creek before I jumped ship to run in the 2017 by-election. I'm wondering if you could articulate a little bit for folks just how this project might dovetail a little bit more with some of the visions of Hogan's Alley. Obviously, the viaduct's still there, and it will take some time to see the removal of the viaduct. So this will come before anything on that 200 block. I'm wondering if you could just sort of share some of the vision on how you might see that integrating.
Well, I can comment briefly about the design and the aspects of the building, which have already been mentioned. And again, I mentioned the 19 social housing units, but the development itself is an opportunity for what I view as community engagement. And for a person like myself, and for those who have lived in that community or descendants of those, and obviously current people as well, for Black people to be involved in some of these activities, whether it's pre-planning, reimagining, or any aspects of new buildings that will be built in the area. This is a new thing for us, and this is very, very special.
Okay, and you know, one of the things that I think just highlighting on the right of first refusal for the retail space, and I'm just reflecting on what the loss of some of that retail space meant for Hogan's Alley as far as the Black community, losing that sort of locus of community activity and retail.
As mentioned before, there hasn't been anything put on paper as to what businesses will actually go into that retail space, but it is an opportunity for the Hogan's Alley group or members of the community to at least know that this particular space is available. I have my views on that space, and I haven't shared it with any of the developers, and Dan Watson, et cetera. But I think it's an opportunity for us to promote the neighborhood and Vancouver's first Black community and the history behind that. So I'm hoping that will be part of the initiative.
Great. Thanks, Randy, and thanks for your service to the city.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Fry. And that is it for your questions. But again, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak to Council on this issue. It's great.
Thank you all.
Good. And speaker number 4 has withdrawn, Council. So speaker number 5, Leo Chow.
Hello? Testing?
Yes,
Can you hear
are
me?
testing. We can hear you perfectly. Yes, can you hear
Thank
me?
you. Yes, perfect.
Great. Then you can go ahead for up to 5 minutes to Council.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Councilors, and staff. My name is Leo Chow of Brickhouse Bar at 730 Main Street. I'm speaking today in support of the bonus proposal. The historic Chinatown was once a fascinating and vibrant family-oriented enclave where East meets West, that's a steep in history and pioneer spirit. But now, vandalism, violence, crime, and drug crisis, plus the current COVID pandemic, have driven away many business and shoppers to elsewhere, like Richmond and Burnaby, where children once played, now strewn with garbage, needles, and trash, and where shopkeepers used to greet, now shuttered and boarded up. It's been heartbreaking to see the decline of my beloved Chinatown in its current state, and we desperately need something to take a positive first step to turn the tide. Obama's proposal will provide some much-needed market and affordable housing, and this will be good for the area. The Brickhouse Bar, which I own and operate, is located on this site and has been the hub of the neighborhood for the last 29 years. And Bombers has been supportive of me returning, and I hope to do so if circumstances allow. There's an old Coptic saying that contains the wisdom for the ages. Life is life, fun is fun, but it's also quiet when the goldfish die. So now, I urge the council to take a first positive step in order to stop this urban decay by support this rezoning proposal. In closing, a legacy gateway project to the gateway of our historic Chinatown is not only a measurement of a stewardship for ourselves, but for our children and their children onwards. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Ms. Chow. And you do have questions. So, Councillor Kirby-Yung, up to 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chow, for coming to speak to council. So I appreciate your comments. I may have spent a few nights at the Brickhouse myself. I'm familiar with your establishment, and it's definitely been a real pillar in the community. So I just wanted to clarify, you can really see yourself returning to this location. So you would just take in your mind, potentially a break from the business and then hope to just restart up here as opposed to at an alternate location. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, Kerry Bonas and I, we've been dialoguing for the last, I think, 9 years now, and about approximate measurements and that I may need and how big a space and so on and so forth. I mean, the other day we were just talking about let's hope we'll get this done before we pass down to our grandchildren. Will have to do it.
Okay. So you wouldn't necessarily go and open somewhere else. You would hope to just move back in here. Is that right?
I would like to because it's 29 years. It's a long time, and we have a lot customers. We are a different breed. There's no funny stuff. There's no drugs and stuff like that. We attract a lot of academics, and people don't want to go to downtown and do the bourgeois things, and Councillor Fries lives in the neighborhood. He's quite aware of our situation, and I'd like to be able to provide the continuity and just to give people in the neighborhood a different venue that if you don't do drugs and don't want to do anything stupid. Yeah, and it's a part of me. I grew up in the area.
I hear that. I appreciate that, and looking to retain the history. So I'm going to say thank you.
Thank you.
Great. That is it for your questions. But again, thank you so much for coming and speaking with council tonight. Very much appreciated.
Pleasure. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Great. You too. So on to speaker number 6, Charlie Kaproff.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay, great.
And just before you begin, if you could verify whether you're a resident of Vancouver or not.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm a UBC Vancouver planning student living in Maple Ridge.
Okay, thank you so much and go ahead, up to 5 minutes.
Okay, great. Hi, Mayor and Council. Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. As I said before, I'm a UBC Vancouver planning student currently living in Maple Ridge. So right now I'm working on an asset mapping project for the city's social planning division. And through that, I became aware of the Main and Union project during my research on Hogan's Alley. And so what really stands out to me is the level of community input that went into the project design, everything from preserving elements of the main taxi stand and the brick house, provision of social housing units, commemorative art, to offering a right of refusal with the Hogan's Alley Society. And also, it was just really great to hear from the speakers before, hearing Adrian's perspective on working with the developer and Randy's connection to the area and how this has been a really special experience. I'm really excited for the future of this area, and I'm in support of the project, and thanks for letting me share.
Well, and thank you for taking the time to share with us. And Councillor Kirby-Yung, I have you on the list. Is that just a holdover from the last speaker?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. So there are no questions for you, but again, thank you for both the work you're doing and taking the time to share that with us.
No problem. Take care.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So, Madam Clerk, I'm just looking for some guidance. I have the next name on the list as a speaker number 8, Divine Niedermeyer.
It is the clerk here, Chair Carr, and speaker number 7, I do believe, is on the line now.
Oh, great. Okay. And the name of speaker 7, I don't have that speaker's name on my list.
So the speaker number 7 is King Mong Chang.
Yes, that's right.
Great. And I can
Hi
hear
there.
that you are, and we can hear you clearly. So go ahead to speak to council up to 5.
Okay, thank you. So my name is King Mong, and I just want to begin with acknowledging the sites located on unceded Coast Salish territories, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nation. Also want to acknowledge that this month, February, is Black History Month, and also in 2 days we also celebrate, 3 days, celebrate Lunar New Year as well, which is a very big day for especially Chinese and Chinatown community, although with COVID. I've worked in Chinatown for around 8 years, primarily with low-income Chinese-speaking residents, and we have gone to the open houses in the past with the applicant as well for the past, the current, I guess, application and things. Our main concerns with the project around the social housing, but perhaps I should just begin and just acknowledge the important work I think that the developer and the community has, especially the Black community, has done around the engagement and the retail and the cultural aspects, the housing with Hogan Alley Society. I think that is really important work, especially like I mentioned, is cultural redress work and the future of rebuilding Hogan's Alley is something that's very important and something that our group that I work with in Chinatown Concern Group, which we sent correspondence to council as well, is very supportive of and very important. And we're happy to see the support that the society and the Black community have in that future work, in the ongoing work, and the future that will come from the fruits of the work that's being done. And so those aspects of the project we are supportive of. Our concern lies with the gentrification of this project, the context still in downtown Eastside where there's a lot of people that cannot afford homes. We have rising SO rates, rents throughout the decades, but especially with gentrification that's been happening in Chinatown and downtown East Side, we do not think the 19 social housing units is enough, and the ratio to market housing is also not reasonable. So those are our concerns, but overall, I do want to be clear that the group is neither in overall opposition to the project or neither in overall support of the project because of the concerns that that we have raised, and also the things that we think are important, but the option before us right now is that of either opposing or support. So just wanted to highlight those aspects that we think are important to engagement with the Black community, especially with Hogan Society and beyond, but also the important elements of affordable housing that we need desperately in the area, and especially as Chinatown continues to gentrify and the impact that the pandemic is having on the community.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for being clear about what elements of the project you support and what you have concerns with. But you do have some questions, so if you want to just stay on the line. Councillor Swanson, go ahead, up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, hi, King Mong. I'm just wondering if you could, I think you've thought about this a bit. When you're trying to acknowledge a community, is it enough to acknowledge whether it's a racialized community or not, or do you have to acknowledge other elements too, like whether it's a working class community or a middle class community, that kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure. I think we can't forget the class element and especially the context of currently right now in downtown East Side and Chinatown. I think also historically as well. We talk often this project, being considered under zoning of Chinatown, talking that the early pioneers of Chinatown were also working class and very poor, and we still have residents currently that I work with that are low-income residents that are impacted by gentrification, that see the need for affordable housing as well. So somehow all those factors should be considered. The cultural aspect, but also the working class and the class aspect as well. For this site, I do think the importance of the Black community and for them to, in some sense, in that sense, to decide what they think is important to them. I think from my perspective, I'm talking with the low-income Chinese-speaking residents in Chinatown. I'm going to open houses and bring up the concerns of affordable housing. Those are things that we highlight. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. The staff told us that of the 19 units, they could only guarantee that 33% of them would be at welfare shelter rate. Do you think that's enough?
No, we think that all of it needs to be at shelter rates. We need more shelter rate housing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Swanson, and thanks so much. Those are it for your questions. But again, very much appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and offer your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So moving on to speaker number 8, Divine Niedermeyer.
All right. Hello?
Yes, hello. Yes. We
I'm
can hear
on?
you clearly. We can hear you clearly.
Oh.
So you can speak to council for up to 5 minutes.
Oh,
can
perfect.
you hear us? Yeah.
Yes, I can. Well, thank you. Well, good evening. My name is Divine Demeyer, and I acknowledge that I live on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And members of council, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm a member of the Black community in Vancouver, and I'm also a landscape designer. And tonight I'm speaking in opposition to the rezoning application for the 728-796 Main Street site, and mainly for the following reasons. So while the applicants recognize the significance of the Black community in this area, it is unclear how this has been reflected in the involvement and the consultation of the community at large in an open and inclusive process. The calling for involvement was not open, and the information that was presented tonight was mostly absent from the city's website. I'd like also to point out that it's not sufficient to approve the project based on the premise of future consultation. The proposal should reflect the needs and aspirations of the Black community at large before it moves forward. The landmark building site is one of the few standing buildings that was not destroyed by the construction of the viaduct over the historical Hogan's Alley. And the Black community continues to experience a lot of discrimination in carving out spaces within the city, and this project presents an opportunity to honor the presence and culture of the Black community in Vancouver. And while Hogan's Alley is a key heritage site in the city, it is currently not acknowledged within any city bylaws or zoning as a required stakeholder on applications. And therefore, this continues to place the Black community in a marginalized position. So it is recommended that part of the process of consultation includes some overlap with having the Black community, Chinese community, and Indigenous community at the same table, and recognizing that the site is located on unceded and ancestral territories. The project could allow for some collaboration on ideas between all cultural groups. There needs to be cultural recognition through the design of the project. In some submitted comments, we've made some outlined recommendations on what this could be. Overall, I think there needs to be a wide and clear communication to raise awareness of this project and to engage the community meaningfully at large as a way to honor the community and address some of the historical injustices that the Black community has experienced through the destruction of Hogan's Alley. So I guess to conclude, given the lack of inclusive and undocumented consultation of this project, it is currently recommended that this application is not approved at this time until proper consultation has happened and the proposal reflects the needs and aspirations of the Black community. Thank you.
And thank you for taking the time. There are no questions for you, but again, very much appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and express your opinion on this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are moving on to speaker 9, Jacqueline Lowe.
Thanks. And I'm calling in. I'm a Vancouver resident in the Grandview Woodland riding, commercial drive area to be specific. So I'm walking distance from this site, and I'm just an interested resident calling in here this evening. I did want to re-echo what Divine's statements were. Some of my comments tie and relate to some of her feedback. I think, saying that there's commitment to the history and actually presenting an actionable plan that has been followed that documents full and proper consultation with the Black community are two different things happening here tonight, saying that you're committed to social change, but also saying that nothing's been fully negotiated or ironed out and, things are still very preliminary, I think is honestly an indication that this application isn't ready for the next steps. This building site and location, like Divine mentioned, is one of the last pieces of building architecture that is still standing with bones today that hasn't been destructed by the viaduct. I believe there is a portion of the church nearby that has some of the original architecture of the original Hogan's Alley, but most of the buildings have been completely destroyed. So when we talk about the significance of this site, it is immense. And starting with signage and art and muralization work is really just honestly a starting point, in my opinion, of the kind of cultural recognition that could be occurring here. When I think of design and I think of community and cultural recognition, I think of experience. I think of, what is this site going to offer that is going to fully educate the community and offer all of those points and threads of connection and integration back that is really going to allow people to feel at home and want to interact and spend time with the property. And so the fact that this site is also located at the gateway point into historic Chinatown coming through along Main Street, to me, again, when I think of, okay, well, what is the gateway? What is the signifier happening here within the public realm? I'm not really seeing anything that signifies that. I'm seeing reference to design standards for just following traditional guidelines for paving types and things of that nature, but I'm not seeing anything that would actually cue to the public that this is an important intersection within the community and a very important transition point in the community for what is going to be part of the experience ahead. Similarly, there seems to be some great communication happening with the family around Vi Moore and the legacy and her honor within the muralization piece of the building itself, and that is absolutely fantastic. But when I look at the drawings and I look at the laneway, the fact that there is that heritage T connection, that laneway has always had back into the heart of the original Hogan's Alley, I don't see any sort of articulation in this space that really speaks to that heritage and that connection. And so it's like, if you have the arms and the legs in place in all these future plans, but you don't have that core connection, that core piece, and that experience level of things ironed out, then I don't think you're going to have the complete experience and quality of experience that could have been created as part of this application. I also want to say that at a higher level, I think some of the things occurring here, I see the development team trying to be sort of reactive in hearing, from past open houses that the Black community wasn't being engaged. And so I see them working in a reactive space of trying to connect with the community and trying to offer things. And that's great. But in a higher level of thinking about some of the systemic injustice that is occurring here, I think the whole application as a whole has suffered under the fact that it is currently just exclusively zoned and acknowledged as an HA1A parcel. And so it's exclusively said, okay, well, here you're going to, by default, go through a process of engagement with the Historic Chinatown Advisory Committee, at which point, as Teen pointed out earlier this evening, not only has that designation and design guides been evolving since 2011, but even right through to 2017, at that point, it was acknowledged in the feedback that the Black community was effectively being ignored and not properly engaged at that point. So fast forward through that whole history and the fact that there has not ever been a formalized process of engagement with the Black community, the points of suffrage of that, I think, have just continued to extend now to current date, where, this application has gone through some rounds of updates and things, but again, it's kind of done so in a reactionary state. And the difficulty of that is, where does that actually respond back to public interest? Where does that actually respond back to Vancouver residents and the community at large? There should be a very clear public process in place that is documented for residents like myself to be able to turn to and ideally even be part of as part of that consultation process. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And if you want to just stay on the line, you actually do have questions from Councillor Fry, but I'm just wanting to confirm with the clerk that we actually have quorum, because some of the councillors are not. We don't see their images on the WebEx. So, Madam Clerk, do we have quorum in the?
Yes, it's the clerk here, Chair Carr. We do have quorum, but it does appear Councillor Kirby-Yung is having some connectivity problems with the WebEx.
Point of privilege.
Yes, Councillor, go ahead, Councillor Kirby-Yung.
I'm just confirming that I'm here, but as mentioned earlier today in one of our many meetings, my computer schedule for replacement and my camera is intermittent.
Thank you again for reminding us of that, Councillor Kirby-Yung. That's
no
great.
problem.
And Councillor or Chair Carr, it's the clerk here. We were also missing Councillor DeGenova if she's on the line.
I am. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. We can. Sorry for that interruption. You do have some questions, so Councillor Fry, go ahead with questions up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, thanks. And really quickly, you'd referenced Ms. Nademe's speaking points, and you shared some similar points. I'm just, are you representing a group speaking before us today?
No, I'm not. I'm just an interested resident. In full disclosure, I am a landscape architect, and I was involved in Nora Hendricks' place across the street. And Divine was actually a MLA student at UBC. And she's not a member of Hogan's Alley, but she participated with their team on consultation of that project. And so we've formed a friendship and have stayed in touch. And on matters of public realm and public interest, we've just paid attention to this area and have kind of tracked things over time when it comes to this development. But it's just kind of been over the last year or so that we've kind of found some information out.
More info that I was looking for. I just wondered if you were representing a group and that we had overlooked that fact. Okay, no, totally appreciate it.
No.
So you are familiar with Hogan's Alley Society and the work that they've been doing in this space as well, and
Absolutely.
The larger vision for the. Okay, awesome. Well,
and honestly, as a person, thanks. I was going to say, as a person who has designed in collaboration with them in that area, that my concern is that because nothing's been ironed out here, and again, there's a lot seeming to be missing from the public realm. I'm just actually wondering if, the proposal of negotiation is perhaps putting Hogan's Alley in a point of conflict from even being able to speak out here tonight.
That's a very good question. Perhaps one might ask of staff later at that point. But thanks for joining us.
Okay. Yes, I will echo that. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Councillor Fry, for your questions, and thank you very much, Ms. Lowe, for your comments on tonight's issue. Very much appreciated. So, Council, we're moving on to speaker number 10, Chang Ong.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. So I'll go ahead to Council, up to 5 minutes.
Great. So my name is Ong Chan-zi. I'm a resident of Burnaby, but I work with several organizations in Chinatown pretty closely. I am here to speak in opposition to this project. I'd first like to draw connections between this project and the proposal at 105 Kiefer that was rejected 4 years ago. This project and 105 Kiefer are similar in that both projects had a proposal of approximately 80% market housing and 20% social housing. And at the time in 2017, the community of Chinatown agreed that this would be a gentrifying project, and the City Council agreed to reject the proposal. So in terms of the social housing units that have been proposed, I want to echo the concern by Councillor Jean Swanson that only 33% of the social housing units will be at welfare rate. If there are any social housing units that are proposed, they have to all be welfare rate. And the current number of 19 units is, first of all, too small for the need in the city. It is also below the 27 rooms that already exist at the Creekside youth properties. And so if this proposal is to be adjusted in the future, the building must have, at the very minimum, 27 units to replace the SRO units 1-to-1. And ideally, this building would be 100% social housing to account for the city's needs. I have several more worries about this project. First, I'm worried about the businesses that will potentially be tenants at this building. Although the developer has promised a Black-owned business on ground floor, I'm worried that the other 5 businesses will not be culturally appropriate. And we've seen this with the 2 developments at Main and Kiefer, where the restaurants there are wholly not appropriate for the neighborhood. And so if there are to be adjustments made to this proposal, the businesses have to be culturally appropriate for the neighborhood. I'm also worried about the residents who might occupy the building. For those who can even afford the extravagant prices of the market housing units, I'm worried that they will not have the historical and social context of the neighborhood of Hogan's Alley, Chinatown, the downtown east side, and it will further marginalize the low-income residents of the neighborhood. I'm also worried that the developer is using their community outreach with various stakeholders with the Hogan's Alley project as a way to tokenize their agreements with these organizations to proceed with this gentrifying development. I'm worried that they are simply saying that because they are promising a Black-owned business, because they're promising social housing units, that this will be an appropriate development for the neighborhood, but this is not true. Yeah, thank you. That's all I have to say.
That's great. I very much appreciate the time you've taken to speak with us and be clear about and clarifying your position on this project. Thank you. And you have you have no questions. So again, thank you again. And Council, we are now on to, I understand that speakers 11, 12, 13 aren't on the line. They may join. I will call and call out their names. But speaker 14, Cheryl Lee Madden.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yes, we can.
You can hear me, right?
Go ahead. Yes, we can hear you clearly. Go ahead. Up to 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Cheryl Lee Madden. I'm a research blog writer for the Hogan's Alley Society through the Nora Hendricks Place Garden Project in conjunction with the Chinese community. We just had a lovely Zoom meeting. I'm a student of University of British Columbia, enrolled in the Sociology 433 Directed Studies course, which examines culture. My question to Mayor and Council and to the applicant of the 728-796 Main Street project is regarding culture. Now that I understand the applicant has offered one commercial unit as a right of first refusal specifically for use by Hogan's Alley Society to further establish a presence of the Black community in this area. But there are intangible cultural assets. Culture encompasses community identity, specifically for use by the Hogan's Alley Society, which would include their values, beliefs, aspirations, memories, knowledge, which are expressed through cultural practices, language, food, design, and rituals, taking in all of the rich cultural heritage of music and art, spiritual aspects of the Fountain Chapel, which was integral to the community. I'm wondering how one commercial unit could offer all of that. If maybe the applicant could speak to that a little more, because
actually, just to clarify it, it's your role in speaking to council to express your opinion and your support or lack of support for the project, but not to ask questions. However, councillors are listening to you, so one of them may pick up that question and ask that of staff. There's no more questions to the applicant at this point. That happened prior to the speakers, but anyway, you can go ahead and go ahead with your own comment.
Well, then my question is to council, and so I'm concerned about the cultural aspect, and if maybe they could elaborate a little more of how Hogan's Alley Society would be fostered and supported within this development.
So there's no questions either to council. However, you've expressed your a concern.
Okay, maybe it's my concern then. Let's just leave it as my concern, because I'm not getting any answers at the moment.
No, but you might find that councillors in their closing comments or in the questions they ask pick up the points that you've made.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And thanks again for taking the time. You do have, though, some questions from Councillor Swanson, so I will advance her, and you can if you could be prepared to answer her questions, that would be great. Councillor Swanson, up to 5.
Hi, thank you. It's not fair. I can't answer your questions, but you are supposed to answer mine, but you don't have to. So I share your concern about the vagueness of the cultural contribution, and I wondered if you heard what the applicant told me at the beginning of this, which is yes, they're going to offer the right of first refusal for a business site, but that the person who takes it will have to pay market rent, namely the same rent as everybody else in all the other businesses. Did you hear that?
I've been with meetings from the beginning, so I've heard everything. I was wondering how one commercial unit could encompass all of the culture and all of the heritage that was part of the Hogan's Alley.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you for making it.
Thank you.
For me.
Okay, and that's it for your questions. But again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Moving on to number 15, Chang Ji Li.
Chang Ji here. One moment. Chang Ji 可以講。So I'm Chan, but I'm translating for Chang Ji. Chang Ji 可以講啊，你依家反唔反對啊？
而家可以講介紹我個名，我住喺邊度就得啦，係嘛？
係。
就問我同唔同意見起？
My name is Chang Ji.
一半一半啦。
I think that. Sorry. 你依家講依個 main 街啊，你依家反對定支持啊？
我反對。
I oppose the Main Street this proposal because I think it should be half social housing, half market housing.
反對。
你係一半一半，即係一半呢個低收入房屋，然之後一半係呢個你係咪覺得唐人街有啲咩問題？呢個係喺唐人街。
唐人街而家少咗好多我哋唐人所買嘅嘢咯，所以如果係同意，呢我就係一半嘅一半啫，即係要多啲關照我哋低收入嘅咯。
So Chinatown is now losing more affordable businesses, and I think that we need more support as Chinatown residents. And this is, I'm half on this. 有冇嘢再講啊？我完畢啦，係咪啊？
如果起多啲，我哋低收入有得住得上去噶啦。
We want city councilors to know we want more buildings that we, as Chinatown residents, can move into. 仲有冇嘢啊？I forgot. I forgot if there's any more that. 仲有冇嘢啊？你係咪你仲有冇嘢想講啊？
我唔記得點講，首先諗到而家唔記得啦。
I thought about it, and I don't remember all the points, but I think that covers a lot of my points that I wanted to share.
Great, and thank you so much for translating. That's very helpful. And there are no questions, but again, thank you and express our thanks to
佢話多謝啊，佢哋呢啲人多謝你。
Okay. Great, thank you. Moving on to speaker 16, Crystal Parabu.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. So go ahead for up to 5 minutes.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Crystal Parabu. I am a curator, activist, and writer here in Vancouver on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I'm actually going to be the project manager for Vancouver Mural Festival's Black Strathcona Resurgence project. And this project was developed kind of to continue the work that I started with VMF last year. I was a guest curator, and part of my curatorial approach was to provide more visibility to Black artists. I myself am a half Black resident living here in Vancouver, and I know many Black artists within the community, and none of them I had seen represented within Vancouver Mural Festival. And part of what I wanted to do was tell the story of Hogan's Alley, which is that beautiful mural you can now see on the viaduct by artist Anthony Joseph, along with some other Black artists that I brought on board. We had amazing programming around it, and the response from the community all around was amazing, that we decided to take that curatorial approach and put it into a project that would have a bigger cultural impact, and that's the Black Strathcona Resurgence Project. And so essentially, the project is functioning as a means of reconciling the erasure and systemic racism endured over time by Black bodies in Vancouver. So my job is to essentially put together an advisory committee that is going to that already comprises of different Black leaderships of different industries who have prominence within the area, who are city planners, there's also representatives of Hogan's Alley Society on the advisory as well. I also volunteer with Hogan's Alley Society and have been a part of their land trust petition and everything of the sort. And so what we've decided is that even though that petition hasn't gone through, we can start to do things to reclaim Black visibility in the neighborhood, starting with this project. And so we're going to be making public murals over the span of 3 years. And we're going to be partnering with different local Black artists, curators, and also we're working with businesses and communities in the process as well. So we're hoping for this to happen in July, and already we've been in contact with many BIAs and many business owners of the like, just to let them know about the project and kind of hear what they want to get out of it. And the community engagement aspect is already happening. As we know, the Strathcona neighborhood used to be known as Black Strathcona because the neighborhood itself is directly correlated with early Black migration. So the first Black communities arrived to BC predominantly from California and Alberta, late 19th century, early 1900s. And we know that their presence in the area, even though it grew over time, there was contempt from the city that was also fueled by the media. And then the viaduct happening in the 70s drove the community out. But today in Vancouver, although you can't see the Black community in such a concentrated area as you did in Black Strathcona, the Black community still very much exists in the city and are very dispersed. And so this project is also in a way to commemorate the history of that area, but also to celebrate the current Black residents that are in the city of Vancouver as well. And even though that is also the center, the goal of the project is to provide that visibility to the Black communities. As a community builder myself, I'm approaching this ensuring that we are building solidarity with both the Chinatown communities and the MST communities, the Indigenous communities as well. So we are going to have collaborative murals with Cantonese and MST artists as well. So this is very much a community project. And already just speaking with some of the BIAs, it's also an opportunity for them to become acquainted with some of the culturally owned businesses in the area, especially in Strathcona, some of the Black-owned businesses and some of the Black businesses that want to set up shop in Strathcona. So even though this is just a project that is putting up public murals, it's also very much transforming the landscape culturally in terms of what businesses are up there, what communities are engaging with each other. And to also address a point that was brought up earlier in terms of the graffiti, we're also hoping that this is going to provide safety for some of the community as well. It's been proven statistically that public art helps to provide safer communities, safer places for women and BIPOC artists, BIPOC communities to feel safe, and create the city to be more beautiful. So again, the timeline for this project is over 3 years. So this is year 1 that we're in, 2021. And we've already identified 25 plus different potential walls that we've scoped out. And this also includes the famous church that that was a staple piece to the Black community historically and is now transformed into a residence. So we're hoping that this project is going to really, in addition to the programming that's going to happen with it, that it's really going to help transform culturally the space, and the right people are involved in it. And so with this specific site, we're already working with the descendants, and we're already working with the advisory committee to ensure that it is going to culturally signify what the community wants it and needs it to.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. You don't have any questions from council, but I just really want to appreciate that you did speak to us and very clearly expressed your opinion on this. It's very, very welcome by council.
Thank you.
Council, I'm going to call a second time now for speakers. So if there's any speakers wishing to speak to council on this item, call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 34561 # to get on the list. And that number also will be tweeted out, available live stream. Madam Clerk, do we have any other speakers on the line?
Yes, Chair Carr. We have registered speaker number 13 has joined the line, Lee Shen Lung.
Great. Okay, Lee Sheng Lung. If you can hear me, you could speak to council now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Go ahead to council, up to 5 minutes.
Hi, so I was speaker number 10 on Chanta. I will be translating for Lee Sheng Long.
Ah, great. You were Chang Ong? Great.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Go ahead.
先生，你在吗？李先生，李先生，你在吗？
喂。
哎，你可以说了。
哎，直接讲中文就好了吗？
中文就可以。
Hello, how are you？ 我的看法是不建议开发，因为除非说你有很多的那个平价住宅，因为如果高级住宅的话，都会影响到这些平价住宅的品质，因为很多现在都是低收入的人比较多，像我现在我们这边也都是比较低下阶层的老人家，所以是希望不要开发，除非说你有另外一个有更好的办法，也让这些老人家也能够住得好一点，要不然才会被那些比较高级住宅的人瞧不起，这样子。
Okay. The high-priced developments are negatively influencing the low to moderate priced buildings in the neighborhood and the residents. And if the seniors can get better quality housing, that would be the best. 你还有东西要说的吗？
就是说，最主要就是我们这个是唐人街，你到每一个国家、每一个地方去，都是有一个唐人街。如果一开发以后变成没有这个唐人街，就等于好像就是说把这个华人的一个历史性的记忆的回忆都取消掉了，这样太可惜了。所以希望说也能够保留下来这个中国的文化。谢谢。
Yes. So I forgot to mention the first part that he is against the proposal. So in the second part, every part of the world has a Chinatown, and Chinatowns should be preserved, the Chinese culture, and as they were some of the first Chinese immigrants. 还有别的吗？
没有，就这样。
That's it. Thank you.
Great. And thank you again for translating, and to the speaker as well for taking the time to speak to us. There are no questions, but again, very appreciative of taking that time. So, Madam Clerk, do we have anyone else on the line right now?
It is the clerk here, Chair Carr, and no, there is no one on the line right now.
Okay, then I am going to call for a third and final time. For those who want to speak to this item, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 34561 $. Yes, and we will take council a 5-minute break as we wait to see if others phone in for speaking to this item. quorum, being informed by the clerk. So, Madam Clerk, if you could just verify whether there are any other speakers remaining on the line.
Yes, it is the clerk here, Chair Carr, and there are no speakers on the line.
Okay, given that there are no additional speakers, the speakers list is now closed. And since we have received few or no public comments on this item from 5 p.m. today, I suggest we now close the receipt of public comments and move on to hearing closing comments, asking further questions of staff and making a decision. First, does staff have any closing comments?
Sorry,
Hi there, this is Rezone. Hi there.
Sorry,
this is
it's the
Planning
clerk
Department.
here,
Yes.
Chair Carr. We need to ask the applicant first.
The applicant first. I was just going by memory on the order, so let's ask the applicant first. Sorry about that. If the applicant wishes to make closing comments, go ahead.
Hi, Dan Watson here. I want to thank the Deputy Mayor and Council for considering this application. We believe we've made significant progress through many years of work on this project in reaching out to communities that are not typically engaged in the development process, and some of the speakers today alluded to that. We're excited by the work we're doing with the Moore family and with the Hogan's Alley Society in particular. I want to address quickly the suggestion that came up that some of these elements are not fully formed. I do want to be clear that the commitments that Bonus has made to the right of first refusal, to the commemorative piece with the Moore family, and retentions of some of the elements of the heritage buildings on site, the historic buildings on site, these are firm commitments that Bonus has made. The details of the mural will be led by the Moore family and the artists that they select, not by Bonus. So we're excited to see where that goes. And while it's too soon to start identifying tenants for the retail units, Bonus is committed to the right of first refusal with the Hogan's Alley Society and is excited about the opportunity to support the reestablishment of Black-owned businesses in this community. We've engaged directly with hundreds of people through this process, including through 3 open houses, through formal and informal conversations with area residents, members of the Chinese community, and members of the Black community. And while it's taken time to arrive at some of these commitments that Bonus has made, we believe in them, and we're looking forward to supporting Bonus, and the project team is really looking forward to carrying through on these commitments. So thank you again.
Yes, great. And thank you for those comments, but I thank you. And I'll now turn to staff for any closing comments.
Hi there, this is rezoning and current planning, so we don't have any closing comments. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And Council, it is your opportunity to ask any questions of staff. As you know, only questions to the applicant comes prior to hearing from speakers. So if there's any questions to staff, I think I see some. Councillor Boyle, go ahead, up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Carr. I have 2 questions, I think just 2 questions to staff. And the first is around heritage. We heard in the presentation that it was deemed that the building had undergone too many changes to have heritage value, but my understanding is that we have been working on shifting to a broader understanding of cultural and intangible heritage, and so I'm wondering how that fits with this location, which clearly has cultural heritage through and through.
Hi, Councillor Boyle. This is Team here from Rezoning, and thanks for the question. I think we can try to answer this in a couple of ways. Is that as is typical of a rezoning site, we do ask the applicant to bring forward a statement of significance, and that statement of significance looks at the different heritage elements of a building, and the recommendation comes to staff in terms of whether or not the historical and physical elements of the building have been retained over time. It was determined in 2014, which was a few years ago, that the building had been so significantly altered. However, things have shifted since then, and I think in the last in recent years, we've broadened our understanding of cultural intangibles and cultural heritage, and that's where it puts us today. And we're really excited to move beyond just looking at the physical components of a building as importance of heritage, but thinking about how we engage communities and how we work collectively and how we ask community to even steward spaces. So it's both a lens and an action and an outcome. And so I think this is really represented here. And so I think what you're speaking to is something that we're really trying to work towards. And I think it's really shifting as we really broaden our perspective on culture.
Okay, great. I appreciate that, and as always, look forward to hearing more on it. I'm going to attempt this same land economics question in a different way and see if I can better understand it as well. So, hoping to get some clarity on buildings where there's a requirement to replace a one-to-one replacement of existing SRO housing stock. Is it typical that we would increase the density on the site to create the financial situation to pay for that replacement rather than requiring the replacement as a base of what the existing zoning would be, and then consider voluntary CACs on top? Is that clear? I'm just trying to figure out, wrestle through the public benefit piece of this.
Hi, Councillor Boyle, it's Planning here. Yes, we do absolutely consider rental replacement through the delivery of projects that come in for rezoning, especially in this case, the SRO through the social housing component. And yeah, I think when we looked at the pro forma, it was understood that the value of the land lift was somewhere around $7 million. And then when we further analyzed the project, it was also discovered that through that $7 million, what could be supported in terms of a public benefit would be the social housing units delivered on site. And actually, the social housing units would be valued at $7.5 million. So it would actually exceed the value of the land lift. And also recognizing that all the project costs, recognizing that the project costs and the project costs always are a part of the pro forma, even if we add the public benefit.
Okay, so I guess I'm just trying to get at how, if they're required through the policy, how they count as how we're counting them as a voluntary CAC.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. This is Teresa. Yeah, I recognize that our answer wasn't as crisp as it should have been the last couple times, but this is all, you are exactly right. This is all part of the pro forma analysis. It is a requirement. However, whenever there's a requirement, whether it's a SRO, a daycare, an SRW, those project costs are always part of the pro forma analysis. And if there is an additional CAC, cash CAC left over, that does happen sometimes. On this one in particular, the SRO requirement was part of that pro forma analysis. That calculation was done, and that has been absorbed in the process, in the project costs, like these things always are. I hope that clears it up.
All of those answers together help. So, and I'm out of time. Thank you for all of those.
Thanks, Councillor Boyle. Councillor Hardwick, on to you for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. So, cutting to the chase, this is a massive density bump that this project is getting, and the question is it worth it in terms of the SRO units? And I really have not got a straight answer that I can rationalize about why you are required to replace SROs on a one-to-one basis, and then you're not. So explain to me how we are supposed to replace SROs on a one-for-one basis, but we're not.
Thank you, Councillor Hardwick. This is Teresa O'Donnell. I'll ask Allison to jump in, but basically on this one, we did believe that we met the spirit and intent of the ordinance. While we don't have a one-to-one replacement, we did actually double the square footage, and these are all self-contained, fully self-contained units. They have balconies and amenities, and we believe the quality of these units, the fact that they're larger, they're self-contained, while there's not a one-for-one unit count, we doubled the square footage. So we believe that satisfies the requirement. And if Allison has anything to add, ask her to jump in.
Yeah, I think the critical aspect here is to understand the difference between a policy objective and the SRA bylaw, what it restricts. We are not required, council can entertain an SRA permit and a rezoning that allows for less than one-to-one replacement. And that's done through the pro forma analysis and the review by our real estate services group.
Okay, I can't speak. Okay. This is a real example. So we're building a bunch of condos that are going to further gentrify the area. Who are these condos for that that you're building here? What are we expecting in terms of the income level, and who's going to be attracted to moving into these condos?
The income level.
Anybody?
Hi, Councillor Hardwick. Hi, it's planning here. That's a great question, and I think it would be up to the market to determine who tenants and who owns these strata units. So we can't say at this point in terms of looking forward, because that would be really up to individual owners who wish to purchase these strata units. And so we don't know what the income levels would be.
So we're not replacing the SROs on a one-to-one basis. We can't comment on who these market condos are going to be appealing to that are clearly going to gentrify the area. And the rest of the project is market rate rents for commercial space for market for the for sale condos. So what are we getting? One commercial space on a first right of refusal basis? Is that it? Further on that, why wasn't it donated as a Black History place for free for a nonprofit society? Seems to me that, you know, there's, again, a massive density bump, and what is the balance of cultural deficit you'll leave behind?
Hi, Councillor Hardwick. Can we just ask for clarification on the question, if you don't mind?
Okay. I'm going over the points again. So you've answered that we have requirements on SROs except for when we don't. We are giving a massive density bump, and you can't tell me who these condos are for that we're doing this for. And there's one space that's being made available on a first right of refusal basis and market rates, and that you see as being a good deal?
Hi, Councillor Hardwick. Thanks for clarifying. Yes, we certainly evaluated this application against the rezoning policy at that time, and the rezoning policy allowed for additional residential units here for public benefits. And so that's how we're evaluating this site. And I think just in terms to speak of the commercial retail space, we definitely see the right of first refusal for one of the units is definitely adding to the vibrancy and the historical legacy and the cultural legacy of the area. So in terms of it meeting the policy, it absolutely does.
And that's it for your time, Councillor Hardwick.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead, Councillor Fry, up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, and just to clarify some of the intent from the SRO replacement bylaw, we generally, and I think this is articulated in the report, but we generally don't replace SROs with SROs. The preference is to replace them with more contained units with more dignified living arrangements, bathrooms, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Allison Dunnett here, Councillor Fry. Yes, that's exactly right. So it's a replacement of 24 designated SRO rooms with fully self-contained social housing units with bathrooms, kitchens of high quality.
Right. So, okay. Yeah, no, I just wanted to articulate that and clarify that in light of the previous comments. I'm wondering also if, has there been any contemplation around who the operator of the not-for-profit housing might be and how that might be selected. I know that in the past, Hogan's Alley Society have articulated some interest in that role even, and I'm wondering if those are some of the conversations possibly ongoing that we might expect as this project comes online.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. We are, of course, always speaking with community partners about projects coming down the pipe. This one will go to some form of RFP process in selecting the nonprofit operator. So it'd be far too early for staff to speculate who the future operator might be.
Would it be possible to have more contemplation around something that would reflect indeed the former history of that building as a Porter residence, and maybe something that might serve the Black community as we contemplate the sort of future of Hogan's Alley and in particular when the viaducts come down?
Yeah, I think I can say that for ACCS staff, we're keen to work with our partners in planning about all of the work going on around Northeast Falls Creek and with Hogan's Alley Society. So we'd be interested in exploring those topics for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Councillor Fry. Council, there's no one on the queue for speaking, so I'm looking for a motion.
Happy to move the motion, Councillor Kirby-Young. Move the
Great,
recommendation.
seconder.
Second.
Great. All right, Council, if you want to speak to that, go ahead and get on the list. Councillor Swanson, you're first. Up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, before I was elected, I attended the first open house for this project with people from the Black and the Chinese low-income community. We were concerned then about gentrification. Gentrification is a huge issue in the downtown east side because gentrification pushes up rents in buildings that surround condo buildings, and that we lose cheap units and people become homeless. So close to this building are the Cobalt and the Ivanhoe, which are two SRO buildings that aren't gentrified yet, but could be with this project's impact. We passed a motion a while back for staff to report on the gentrifying impact of St. Paul's. That hasn't happened, but this building of 75 condos is way closer than St. Paul's. We just can't afford to lose precious SRO rooms until we end homelessness. And I'm not just talking about the 24 rooms that are in the building now, but about the rents on the buildings that surround this condo building that will probably go up because of gentrification. One of the speakers said he wanted half of the building to be social housing. I think that's basically the least of what the low-income community needs there. If the Hogan's Alley Society had come here to support this, I would be, more inclined to support it. But to say that Hogan's Alley can choose a business that pays market rent without even having any kind of subsidy isn't much of a contribution. The businesses will be gentrifying too, like Virtuous Pie down on Main Street. And yet, only the other thing, and I know that this is a city responsibility, and maybe we could deal with it if we charged a low lease rate to the nonprofit that manages it, but to only have 1/3 of the SRO units at shelter rate when all of them now are under $500 is a travesty. So I can't vote for this.
Okay, Councillor Swanson, that's good for you. Councillors, I've got the list copied down. I'm going to move us to the main queue. I forgot to do that before when the motion was moved. So I've got all your names down here. So I'm going to just add you in. So if you just hold on for 1 second. Okay, Councilor Kirby-Young, you're next.
Great, thank you. I might offer some comments from some additional perspective. And first of all, I want to thank the speakers that came out in support of this. It's an important project in a really important location, and I really appreciate hearing the comments, particularly from members of sort of storied members of the Black community like Mr. Clark. So I'm grateful for that. I do want to note a few things about this project, and I believe it was referenced that this has been in discussion or kind of underway since 2014, which is 7 years ago. And that made me think about, well, you know, what happens in 7 years? There was a 7 years war, a global conflict. Interesting factoid that apparently every 7 years the human body replicates every single cell. So essentially regenerates itself every 7 years. My point being that that is a significant period of time. And during that time, I think what struck me is in recognizing it was a very sensitive site was the sort of genuine outreach by the applicant to the community and an acknowledgement that they didn't know that much at the beginning. And I think that's really important when we're considering developments on and around historic sites of importance in Vancouver. But they learned, I think, as we all are, and they're willing to learn. So I appreciated that about the project. In terms of the SRO units, critically important to have that housing stock in the city. It also needs to be provided sort of, I think, a dignity to people in terms of quality of living. And this building is honestly old and not sort of providing that level. And it's not going to sustain. It would continue to deteriorate, in my view. I am a big proponent for better quality units. And so I appreciated the explanation by staff that we doubled the square footage here and are trying to provide that sort of quality experience. It is up to the city in terms of affordability, and I recognize and agree that everybody would like those to be as low as they can be. But in terms of the fact that the height was restricted here and was reduced, I believe, by 5 floors was stated approximately. I think staff have done the due diligence on the calculations with respect to the land lift, and that benefit is the delivery in terms of the value of the parcel and the construction of those social housing units to the city. So I just wanted to note that. I also appreciate sort of the retail experience that this particular proponent has, and I would, you know, sort of, I don't believe in doing a lot of amendments on the fly at public hearings, but I would signal to them and encourage them if there are opportunities genuinely to support additional people from the African descent and Black community and entrepreneurs that are interested in opening in those spaces beyond the one for first right of refusal. I think that would be a really positive legacy for the community, and potentially also from the Chinese community, recognizing that these two cultural groups engaged and sort of existed alongside each other. So I think that's an opportunity to explore further, as would be, I think, some additional tangible representation of some of the history on the site, such as commemorative signage and otherwise working in conjunction with the Hogan's Alley Society that do a lot of good work and obviously have sort of the depth in their own experience there. So I would sort of, you know, put a shout out for looking for those opportunities too, in terms of providing that chance for people that happen by the site or nearby and experience it to really learn about what it was and sort of what it represented in terms of where it is situated. And I think that's always an opportunity we don't take advantage of enough in terms of sort of historic exploration or engagement and explanation. So those are, I think, some components. I do know that it was also unanimously supported by CHAPAC as well as the Urban Design Panel after a couple of go-rounds. So that's also encouraging to see. And I did appreciate, although while I love sort of open space and balconies, which has, I think, become particularly important during COVID-19, and that those were lost but out of respect on those top corners, kind of below the top roof level there, in order to sort of respect the building form that was more congruent with sort of Chinatown to the north there. So, you know, I appreciated some of the changes that were made there. So I think on balance, given all that we have heard, and also my final point would be really appreciating the engagement on the public art piece. And, utilizing that opportunity on the development site to reflect the community. But so I think on balance with all that said, I think this has merit. And it also honestly will bring some much needed people into the area because Chinatown, like most commercial areas in our city, has been hard hit by COVID-19 and is not immune to some of the, and it's more acutely felt there in terms of some of the economic challenges that we're seeing due to the pandemic. So on balance, for all those reasons, I will support the application. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kirby-Yung. And Councillor Boyle, you're up next for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Carr. So I will just say I feel really torn on this project. I have been wrestling quite a bit with some good aspects of it. I'm happy to see that there has been some engagement with the Black community and people of African descent. And there's clearly a need for more of that engagement and more of that embedded more clearly in the project. As I spoke to in questions, I'm glad to see the city moving forward on recognizing intangible and cultural heritage. And as we heard from speakers, this is a very significant site. There's a lot of history that's been lost or erased in that neighborhood, and the recognition of that heritage that's built into this plan seems insufficient in the scope of the larger importance of that area for the city and the community. I appreciate the replacement of many of those SRO units, and as Councillor Fry noted, important that they are not just replaced as single room occupancy, but are better units, much more livable for people. That is, of course, important. But overall, I have just wrestled with whether there's enough public benefit being presented in this proposal for what the neighborhood needs, what the site means to many overlapping communities in the neighborhood and in the context of a lot of change, and the social housing units relative to the number of condos, and the bit of heritage, but insufficient relative to the overall context, just lands me on the side of not enough social benefit for what I would hope to see here. So again, while I have felt pretty torn on this project, actually, I won't be supporting it tonight.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Boyle. Councillor Hardwick.
Thank you. Well, for the massive density bump that the developer is getting here, I don't think we're getting enough back to the city of Vancouver for the cultural deficit we'll be leaving behind. And I would like to see more moderate income rental here, not more, seemingly yuppie condos. The sheer size of the development takes little consideration for the neighborhood in which we're building here, and this is a prime example of that. And we're not even replacing the SROs on a one-for-one basis. And yeah, you can say, well, we're making the units, a fewer number of units bigger, but it's not really helping what is a deficit. And it's a condo deal with even though we wouldn't say it, seems like a poor door for the SROs, making them more separate. And even the token retail unit for Hogan's Alley groups is a first right of refusal at market rates. And as I noted before, why wasn't it donated as a Black History place for free, or for a nonprofit society? It could have had a permanent presence. So here's the key. I don't think the community benefits are there. I'm told by staff, it kind of blows my mind, but we are required to replace on a one-for-one basis, but we're not. I guess the rationale is that there's more, floor space allocated to fewer numbers of units, but that just does not compute. And the rest of the projects at market rate rentals for commercial space and market rate for the for sale condos. And to me, this is exactly where we need more affordable housing, not more market condos. It's not even rental. And who are these condos for? I didn't get an answer to that, but not for the people that live here now. And, just doesn't add up to me. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Hardwick. And Councillor Fry to close.
Yeah, so earlier in his comments, Leo Chow, the owner of the Brick House, alluded to the fact that I was pretty familiar with the location. I have been very familiar with the Brick House, but also just that general corner. I remember when the Punjab restaurant was on the ground floor there, when Lucky Red, and then later the new Tiny were galleries in the former taxi stand there. I remember when the porno theater was there that got torn down to build the condos that are adjacent to the London Hotel. Suffice to say, in that entire time, the SRO units in the corner building haven't been SROs in the sense that we might typically contemplate them. They were for quite a while. It was Vince's Backpacker Hostel. And then probably about 20 years ago, they became international student residences. So SRO in housing form, but not in clientele. And I think it's important to contextualize that, because I hear a couple of councillors referencing sort of the gentrification, and I certainly understand where Councillor Swanson's coming from, but in essence, I think the folks who are living there right now were international students who will probably find another place to go should the international student market return to our city. What I do appreciate about this project is, and I've seen it through various iterations, and back when they were talking about a giant Jimi Hendrix statue there and more glass apertures and whatnot was built onto it. I like the more traditional approach that they've taken with this, the scaled down slightly from some of the earlier iterations, the cornice, all that kind of piece. I like the attention to the smaller CRU. So I think architecturally, it's a good fit. I do note that on sort of either side, it's condos that we're seeing. It's the V6A condos on the other side of the alley. And it's I'm not even sure what they're called, the other condos that where the porno theater used to be. So I do think that I was happy to hear Mr. Randy Clark come and speak to this. I was a little disappointed not to hear the Hogan's Alley Society come and speak to this, which I think would have been something that would have given me a little bit more confidence. So instead, I'm going to hope that staff have heard loud and clear that with this new social housing component that will be delivered with this project as proposed, that it does prioritize the Black community, and that we really do kind of take it back to what that building was when it was a porter's residence, and reflect on some of that and do things a little differently, because I do think that there's an opportunity to pay some more homage. I do think that there's an opportunity perhaps for the Bonas family to take a little bit more of an assertive role in supporting the Black community, perhaps through not just a market rate on the rental unit on the CRU on the alley, but maybe something a little bit more supportive that could help nurture this nascent new community effort that is blossoming in the area and that could use some help. And I realize this is a ways away, but so is the removal of the viaduct. So I think that as we're moving forward, I appreciate a lot of the efforts Bonas family are putting into this. I recognize that that really there's, other than the Brick House, there's not much there right now, and that the owner of the Brick House has supported this application. So I will support this. I think there's work to be done, and I'm hopeful that staff and the applicant have heard some of those signals in my comments and some of the other comments, but I will support this.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Fry. And that is it from Councillor for Speakers. So, Madam Clerk, I wonder if you could take us to a vote on this, please.
Point of privilege, Chair. I'll need a vote assist in favor, please.
Okay. Madam Clerk, you've got that? Okay, Council, that has passed with 3 councillors in opposition, Councillor Swanson, Hardwick, and Boyle. So that is it for the end of our agenda, and I just want to thank you all. Thank the clerks for their wonderful support during this, and staff, but also all of you, Council, because it's been a long day, and you actually moved through through the all of these items, in a really solid way, and I'm kind of happy that we have an extra half hour right now that we weren't expecting this evening. So.
Move adjournment?
Thank you very much. That was my next request. Thank you. And the
Councilor
seconder,
Vignova?
please. Seconder? I need a seconder.
Sure, second.
Thank you, Councillor Hardwick. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. We are adjourned.